Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Buy the Horns, a Bitcoin podcast about South Africa, brought to you proudly by Bitvice, the only place to buy self-custody Bitcoin in South Africa. And today we are joined by Ben Arc. Ben is a Welshman who, in the classic British fashion, is a tinkerer in his backyard, builds all kinds of cool shit. You guys might know him from LNBits. You also might know him from the really cool hardware modules he's been building to enable like Lightning POSs, offline transactions, offline vending machines, all kinds of cool stuff. Ben, welcome to the show, man. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a real pleasure.
Good, man. Good. Yeah, Ben. So before we kick off and get into the projects you've been working on, etc., maybe tell people who you are, a little bit about you, and how you got into Bitcoin.
So I think we were quite lucky in Britain because we had a relatively positive news cycle when it came to Bitcoin. So I can never really tell like when I got into it per se, because whereas in other parts of the world they would have all this FUD about how it's used online for gangsters and whatever, and it's this evil internet money. We would have some like BBC tech correspondent, like enthusiastic BBC tech correspondent on the radio said, "Oh, this is the internet money called Bitcoin." So I remember hearing a lot of quite positive stories, and then obviously having an interest in it. And I think for a lot of people, including myself, that you want the world to be a better place, and there's lots of things which you want to fix in society, but you just feel that it's impossible. There's nothing you can contribute to really make have impact and really make a difference in a positive way. But then when you learn more about Bitcoin, you understand the impact it could have just on general society, and the way people interact with each other, and how it can really have a very beneficial impact on humans. Then you get very excited about it, and that's what happened with me. I then went down the rabbit hole. No idea when this was. I have no idea on years or anything. But I was also a victim of the 2008 financial crisis. So I did all the things you're supposed to. I was a young guy. I bought a flat, a nice little apartment, got on the property ladder, and then the rug was pulled out. And it was interesting actually, because again, I was driving to work and I was listening to the radio, and I remember hearing a story about all these landlords who were selling up all their property. And on the radio, they were like, "Right, we don't really know why it's happening, but all these big landlords, who've got thousands of properties, they were starting to sell up property. It was kind of a phenomenon. They were sort of talking about it as if it was a phenomenon, but clearly they were in the know, because it was a few months later that the 2008 stuff happened.
Their banker mates had called them up, and be like, "Hey, bro, you better get out of that. Get out of that property."
Yeah, they just I don't know. It was but I really remember listening to it at the time and being like a fairly new property owner. It making me think, oh, this doesn't sound very good. they surely know what they're doing. So yeah, then all that happened, and I was in 30% negative equity, and it was all quite stressful. And then I moved. I couldn't sell the thing, so it was I think I had like a mortgage holiday for a while, and then I think I defaulted for 2 months or something. And I've never been one for credit and having credit, so that's my only real example in my financial history of credit. But anyway, years passed. We sorted out the house, the flat, managed to sell it, and all that, wrapped up the 30% as a loan and paid that off slowly. And I was teaching at the time, so I was on an all right salary, because in Britain we get teachers, thank God, get paid an all right salary. So I was able to accumulate enough for a deposit for a little, very modest house. So me and my partner, we went and found some houses, and we found this very modest little house, and went to the bank and said, "Can we get a mortgage?" And then he was like typing on his computer, and then he said, "Oh, it appears that you're bankrupt." And I was like, "Am I?" I have no need for credit. I always stayed away. I always hated the idea of owing people money. And that short period where things got a bit flaky because of the the financial crisis and the market being flooded with all these apartments, it meant that I had this horrendous credit history, which I didn't even know about. I didn't even know that I had this profile out there. And whereas, I suppose for some people they try and fix it, the bank, he said to me, you should go back full bankrupt and then claim bankruptcy, and then in 6 years come back. And I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. So I was opt out then. I was like, right, screw you guys. I walked out that bank. I was so angry because I played by all the rules pretty much, apart from I hadn't accumulated a credit rating. But I was a victim of circumstance as well. But so then I was like, yeah, anything of value I have in the bank, I'm just going to take it out. I'm just going to put it into Bitcoin. because it just sort of sickened me. So, and then from that point, I then had skin in the game. And I was teaching as well, and inevitably I would like talk to the kids about Bitcoin. And a lot of my kids, so I worked with kids with quite severe behavioral difficulties and issues, and on a sort of 1-to-1, 2-to-1 basis. So we had very small groups and worked with like kids from youth offending and so on. And a lot of them, they would be buying their drugs online with Bitcoin. And I had a couple who were, because what you often find with kids, sort of teenage kids who get in a lot of trouble, they're free thinkers, but they're free thinkers from a background which hasn't taught them when to, just shut up and just pretend that you're listening. So they can't do well in school. They constantly like asking questions about their surroundings. Why should I do this? Why should I do that? And actually, I think I would say like, pretty much all my kids, if you brought them up in different circumstances, they would all have be some nice, successful people. Anyway, so they were breaking new ground even within their own social circles. So they would be on dark nets buying drugs for their friends using Bitcoin. I always thought it was very interesting. And I had 1 or 2 students, and like they would come in for their IT lesson, and we just spend the whole time talking about Bitcoin. It was good fun. But then the service which I worked for kind of got the squeeze. And at the same time of having the squeeze, Bitcoin had gone up a little bit in price, and I was able to take a little bit, like a sabbatical, a little bit of time off to collect my thoughts, and then maybe contribute in some way in which I could contribute. And then we're quite lucky. Like we live quite modestly, and that we don't spend too much money, so we're able to kind of have like a lifestyle where we can both sort of do little pobbles and part-time work and still survive. And then I still got time then to work on other projects, such as the stuff which I've been building in and around Bitcoin. So no idea on timeframes when all that happened, really. I mean, I remember speaking to a kid in school about Mt. Gox. So it's I must have still been teaching then.
2013? When was Mt. Gox?
I guess it was 40. So I think it was because he had money in Mt. Gox. Which had been, did he have money in Mt. Gox? No, maybe he didn't have money in Mt. Gox. Yeah, I think he maybe had money on an exchange or something. Not an exchange, sorry, a dark market. He was, I remember him talking about the price really going up high, and we were, discussing it, in quite detail. So I suppose it was, maybe that was 2013, because that was the run up, wasn't it? And then when it crashed, then because of the Mt. Gox stuff, 2014.
The irony of that is like, kids from troubled pasts and like a bit rough, but teaching them about Bitcoin is probably the best education, or the best like income earning potential that they could have got, because like if they just bought Bitcoin back then and hang on to it, they've outperformed all of their peers who got straight A's and got good jobs and became bankers, etc. I mean, these guys
I had this one kid, and it was well, actually I must have still been teaching then, so it was supposed to be like 2016, I think, the beginning of 2016. So it was quite low, just before before we went into 2017 with the crazy run up. And he was telling me about his girlfriend's boyfriend. No, his sister's boyfriend. He had a lot of money, like he was like a drug dealer or something. He had like tens of thousands of, £100,000 or something he needed to do something with. And because he knew that I knew about Bitcoin, he would ask me about Bitcoin. I'd say, maybe you should put some money in. And I remember there was one, I had this crazy bullish feeling. I think I got the old charts where it pumped, and then I placed it on like 2016, and I was like, okay, we're here, and it's going to go up to here. If it's going to repeat that same pattern it's done 3 or 4 times before, it's going to be up to 20 grand. And I remember him asking me, and I was like, right, tell this guy just to put all of his money in Bitcoin. And I think shortly after that, I stopped teaching. I never knew. I still don't know whether he did, this guy, whoever this, whether he put all his money into Bitcoin. I hope he did, because he would have made a fortune.
Well, he hasn't come to break your knees like a real drug dealer would have if it went badly. So it must have worked out well for him.
Yeah, bless him.
But,
there was one girl actually as well, and she read her first book with me. I spent about, she was a really bright girl, and I had her from the age of, I suppose, for a couple of years, and I was teaching her like 2 hours a day, pretty much 1-to-1. And this was really interesting about education, more contemporary education, is the kids go home and they spend a lot of time watching these YouTube videos, and their brains gravitate towards good data, and they actually learn all sorts of interesting things, even though they might be like illiterate or enumerate and terrible in school. So she was like that, and I remember I was quite scared of her because she was pretty tough, like, and I remember plucking up the courage after about a year of teaching and saying, right, you're clever, but you can't read or write, so you're going to struggle in the exams. And then she was like, yeah, I know, I'm going to sort it out. And I was like, okay, let's get a book and we'll work our way through it. So we did that, and when she read that first book, and by the end of the book she could read, it was incredible. I wrote like a mnemonic in there, and not mnemonic, a seed phrase. Is that mnemonic? I always get muddled up. The seed phrase thing. I wrote one of those in there, and I put like 50 quid's worth of Bitcoin in it. And I was like, right, look after this book. If you know what this thing is in the future, it'll be worth money. And then I gave her the book.
Have you heard back?
I've no, I've no idea. No idea whether she lost that book or not. But that would be like a decent chunk of change right there. Particularly for me, she was like from an impoverished background. So for her, it would be enough money to buy a car and get a deposit on a flat or something. I don't know.
Yeah. She's probably living it up in Ibiza right now.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, she's in El Salvador.
Yeah. But so a good friend of mine, he spent some time in his childhood in the UK. His dad is an engineer, aerospace engineer, and he told me that he's like, the British are this nation of tinkerers. The guys get into building stuff in their backyards, and like they spend their entire life working a normal job, but then they'll just be like building cool shit in their backyard. They'll build like a replica AC Cobra, or like they'll build a fucking hot air balloon or something crazy, And so that's kind of the part that you've taken, right? Is like you've been building really cool hardware, essentially at home, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never really thought about that, but yeah, I mean, we moved, and I've got a shed now where I do my work from, and like 6 feet that way is my neighbor's shed, and he's got a bunch of tools, and he's always in his shed building stuff as well.
There you go.
And then and then he's like, then maybe not the next door neighbor, the one after that as well. He's got a shed at the bottom of his garden too. I've never really thought about this. Isn't that interesting? I think you're probably right. We're sort of a nation of I was thinking, because you're right. Sort of dudes in Britain, when they get to a certain age, they seem to know how to do a lot of things. Yeah, and they got like a decent access to tools, and they seem to know how to build a lot of things. It's very interesting. I wonder what that is. Anyway,
it's a great national pastime.
Yeah. Tinkering in the shed. Yeah. And it snowballs. So I started. I wanted to kind of like sort of put my feelers out into the kind of Bitcoin community, see what was out there, see what projects were going on. And I went to one of the Lightning Hack Days in Germany, the first Lightning Hack Day in Germany, in fact. And there was someone there who had, who had a sweep machine, and he'd connected a node to the sweep machine, and then he had a QR code on a piece of paper, and you could scan the QR code. It would take you to a website. You would then go into the website and you would input the amount of sweets you wanted, press the button, it would generate an invoice. Then you could then you could copy the invoice to your wallet, pay the invoice, and then when you paid the invoice, the node would see that it's paid, and it would spit the sweets out. And I remember thinking it was super cool, but I was like, I don't want a node in a sweep machine. I want this to be a secondary device. I want to have my node somewhere super duper safe. And then I want this to just communicate to my node, request an invoice, display it. So I got some little electronics. I had a little e-paper screen, because you have to display. This is an issue with Lightning. You have to generate an invoice, display an invoice. And then when you paid the invoice, the little microcontroller inside of it, I used a little ESP32, which is a very powerful little microcontroller. It could see that it could check the server to the node, see that the invoice is being paid, and then just turn the little motor on to spit the sweets out. And I thought that's cool. Like, anyway, so I hadn't really coded before, so I'm saying I did that, but that was like a year right there of me. It was like 3 months of me just getting an image on an e-paper screen, and then but then going to a couple of these hack days and things, and I was able to get a little bit of help from a couple of developers here and there, and people kind of contributed into it, and then eventually I end up with my sweep machine. It can do that. It can do that functionality. Then I'm like, well, if I attach one of these like little, here we are. This is the first. This is called the Flux Capacitor. I made this in because it looks like something out of the 80s. I made this in like 2018, and this is I got one of these little keypad membrane things modules, and then I plugged that into my ESP32, and then I don't know if you can see, I don't know what it says. Ready. Press button to start. Okay, so this will probably turn on actually, I suppose, if I powered it up. And then so then you've got a little point of sale. You know, you can input an amount, it connects to your node, and it displays the invoice, and then you pay the invoice for the amount. But by building these things and then experimenting with them, you start to butt up against these problems. And then you ask people to kind of other projects to kind of solve these problems. But after a while, there's just not enough people working, so you have to then go try and solve those problems yourself. So one of the problems is the fact that with my sweep machine, I had to have an e-paper screen. It was kind of really annoying. Like I just want a QR code which I can scan and pay. So I remember speaking to a guy called George Vasario in the New York Lightning Hack Day. And we were both really interested in the idea of a static QR code, and we were chatting, and we got into this idea of getting a wallet just to do a GET request to a node. Sorry, getting a wallet to do a GET request to a server. Then the server just goes and fetches an invoice from the node, and that's what you get back from the GET request. Then the wallet lets you pay or not pay. So he was a very competent developer. He hacked a Eclair wallet, and then brought in this cool little arcade machine, and then we had a static QR code on the arcade machine, and then you're able to pay it from a Eclair wallet. By doing that, it was a URL, and just would go. The Eclair would go to the URL, get an invoice, and then you could pay it in the wallet. So that was back in, I don't know when that was, but this is before LNURL. It got me very excited about what would be possible if you use kind of like GET requests or whatever with a Lightning. That then the point of sale project then evolved to I found other pieces of hardware. So this is a nice little unit called an M5 stack, and this is an M5 stack faces kit. So this is by a company in China, and they just make these really nice little, it's got a good form factor. And again, it's just, inside of it, there's just an ESP32, but it's all kind of built together for you. So it's got a little screen, and then it's also got a battery, and then you can replace these faces. So you can have like a calculator face. So I'm like, cool, I've got a screen, a microcontroller, and then something with numbers I can press. So that was pretty easy to replicate, this. It was kind of easy to put on here, right? And then, because I was sort of hanging with some of these German developers because of the Lightning conferences, and I went to this bar called Room 77, this iconic bar in Berlin. It's a fantastic bar, very sadly closed actually. They had a node, and they were doing, you could pay for beer with on Lightning. So they started using one of these on my project, and we had it running there for about a year, and it worked really well, which was great. And we had some really good feedback. And then one of the bits of feedback was like, it's quite hard when you've got all these random, payments going into your node to tell which is like for beer in the bar and which is this and which is that. Yeah. So it seemed to make sense that there'd be, that like nodes should try and support that you be able to export your transactions easily to CSV. As well as this, I then thought, well, instead of having a keypad, why not have, and you can't really see it, but there's one on the wall here, but why not have a coin mech? So you put coins in, and then it counts, how many coins you put in, and then that's the thing which then goes. No, wait there. So, sorry. So let me backtrack a little bit. That then goes and it says then I'll present an invoice to me, and then you can on your phone make an invoice, show the invoice to the ATM, and then the ATM will scan it, and then we'll pay you the money.
Hang on, just to clarify that. So essentially what you built is a coin-based Bitcoin ATM that works in reverse. So yeah. But again, again, it's goofy because you need like, I had to get this like QR code scanner, and it's you got your thing. It's like bread, and then there's other project with the Lightning ATM, and they're using a camera, and that's really slow, and it's kind of just goofy. So anyway, by that point, this problem of having to generate invoices
was solved by LNURL. So LNURL was released, a couple of wallets supported it, and LNURL is literally Lightning URL. It's just the ability, it's just a standard that wallets agree that they can do if they get a URL. If someone scans this URL encoded in an LNURL string, then the wallet will do a GET request, and then you'll get some information back like, oh, send me an invoice for X amount and I'll pay it, or here's an invoice for X amount, you pay it, sort of thing. So you can have that thing of having a static QR code, and I scan it. For the user, I'm just scanning it, and it says, do you want to pay that? And you're like, yeah. But what's happening is your phone is connecting to a server, which is then going and fetching an invoice from the node, and then giving that back to your wallet, and then your wallet saying, do you want to pay that? So, but you don't have to keep generating, you can just use this static QR code, so that's LNURL. But you could do it in reverse. You do it in reverse. So if you have a QR code, I scan it, and then the server then says to me, generate an invoice, or says to my wallet, generate an invoice. My wallet does that, then gives it to the server, then the server pays it. So basically I can scan a QR code and then have the money come into my phone. So that's LNURL withdraw. So it kind of, working in the other direction. But what that then meant was that my little ATM, I didn't need to have a camera. I just have a screen. So I could put coins in, and then depending on the amount of coins I would put in, it would then generate an LNURL withdraw, scan the LNURL withdraw, then my wallet goes and, it gives the server an invoice, and then the server then pays the invoice, and I get the funds. So basically, it's the feeling is that you put the coins in the ATM, you scan it, and then you get the money appear in your phone. So you're exchanging your coins for sats. Yeah, but then there was another kind of issue arose, which was that ATM had to have access to my server, or my was kind of before LNURL, I suppose, but I'd have to either have, there's two choices. I either have to write a separate piece of server software for LNURL, for making the LNURL withdraw, or I go the way of it just connecting to my node and using a camera or a QR code scanner. But if I go that way, then this thing has my admin macaroon on it. It has my admin keys, because on nodes at that time, you couldn't have separate accounts. It was pretty hard to have separate accounts. So there's a number of issues. There was not being able to easily figure out what your Lightning transactions are for, in a sort of nice little GUI and export to CSV, all that stuff. The ability to have multiple accounts. You couldn't have multiple accounts on a node. You also you would have to write your own LNURL server software if you wanted to have something fancy for your LNURL ATM. And a lot of people were doing that, and they're kind of replicating work. So it's we need a piece of middleware software which does all this stuff. And then my hardware can just communicate to that. The other thing was as well, with the points of sale, I had 5 different versions. I had an LND version, a C Lightning version, an open node version, a LNPay version, and a Claire version. So I wanted to just write, make one point of sale. That point of sale communicates via an API to a piece of software, and you can plug any funding source into that piece of software. Okay, so this is where this idea of LNBits came along, which is just having that middleware. But it was definitely from having hardware out there in the real world and actually experimentation, and hitting those. Because you can sit around all day if you want to try to come up with divine inspiration, but you've actually got to make stuff, get stuff out there to actually get feedback, or just to hit up against problems which you then need to solve, and then you produce something which is useful, I think.
Man, my head is absolutely spinning over the ramifications of this in the South African context, because what's different in South Africa to the rest of the first world, and it's probably quite similar to El Salvador in this regard, is that a large amount of people operate just in the cash economy. So sure, they've got bank accounts, but culturally what happens is on payday, they go to the bank, they stand in a queue for 3 hours, hundreds of them, and then they withdraw all of their money, and they spend that cash because they don't trust the banking system or whatever cultural reason. But for them to go and buy Bitcoin, they have to sign up with an exchange. There's minimums. They've got to make larger deposits. So for them to go and acquire 10 rands worth of sats, we're talking 50p's worth of sats, is not really viable. But if you can have a Bitcoin ATM that accepts coins in the Spaza shop, which is already accepting payments in Lightning, this is a great way to facilitate, people who are like right at the bottom of the income ladder to be able to start accumulating Bitcoin via Lightning, which is the only really feasible way of doing it, because on-chain fees would kill them if you're buying 10 rands worth of Bitcoin and your on-chain fees are 2 rand for that transaction. You're paying 20% fees. That's not going to work. So what Herman is doing at Bitcoin and Kasi is they are signing up vendors to join Bitcoin network all over the township near where he lives, and these guys are accepting Lightning payments for goods in their shops. But I can just really see how this could work very, very well there, because they're using LNURL already. They're using static QR codes to pay. We discussed this offline. Like these guys, internet connectivity is not. It's not that it's not there. It's just the cost of mobile data is high. So you put that cost on the user who's paying with a cell phone, because he's already got internet access. So the vendor doesn't have to deal with that. And you stick one of these Bitcoin ATMs, a Lightning ATM, in that store. All of a sudden, you could have kids coming in there with $5 and buying themselves some sats. The possibilities are endless, man. It's
cheap.
Cool.
It's cheap hardware as well. So there's this Parallelipolis in Prague, which is this sort of hacker space in Prague. It's very cool. Impossible to Google because I never remember how to spell the name of it. So there are. Try. Good luck, audience. But they went Bitcoin only. So when you go in, they've got like a cafe and you can buy food there and everything. They went, and you can buy T-shirts and whatnot, and it's completely Bitcoin only. And then it's like, well, how do you solve that problem? And they just stuck an ATM on the door. So you go in, you just put your money in the ATM, and then you're Bitcoin only. And while you're there, because I went there this past year for their conference, it's amazing, like just being in a Bitcoin economy. And actually, they ran that conference off LNBits because they were using LNBits on their server software, which was very, very cool because they had NFC cards, so you could do like tap and pay. Which is a great feeling, it's much better than, which that was then also connected to your Lightning, your LNBits wallet. So you could then go into your LNBits wallet and see your funds. And it was very, very interesting. But from LNBits, because then it's easy to make, LNBits is all those things, but also I had this idea that if you have a Lightning node, you want to extend it in a direction which is relevant to you. So if you're a content creator, then you just extend it in this direction. If you're a shop, you extend it in this direction, etc., etc. So we have this idea of extensions which you can build. So if you have like an idea, you can very easily fabricate a little extension. So I had the idea then of an offline point of sale, which is LNURL POS, which is you're using an LNURL pay. So what happens is, and a secret to verify that the payment has come from a legitimate source, or it's been paid. Sorry, to verify payment. What you input an amount into this, okay, and then it generates an LNURL pay. Scan it with your Lightning wallet, and then what's happened is on this device it generated a random 4-digit pin. When you put in the amount and press star and generate the QR code, it generates a random 4-digit pin at that exact point. Encrypts it using a secret which is on the little device, right? Puts it in the LNURL pay. So that's just the LNURL pay is displayed on here, and then it's just this random string of garbled encrypted data in the end. So when your phone scans it, does that GET request to the server, to the LNBits server, it's passing over that little bit of encrypted data to the server. So then when the server sees that the payment's gone through, sees that it's come from, a legit, it's able, it has access to the secret, it's able to decrypt that information. It then sends that back as a receipt to the person who's paying. So they then get a 4-digit pin appear in their phone. So they can then say to the merchant, okay, give them the 4-digit pin, and that proves that they made a payment. So the only way they can get that pin is to actually make the payment. That means that the point of sale itself can be completely offline, because if Lightning transactions are being done pretty much, more like 100%, I would say, on phones, then if the payer is online, then the merchant doesn't have to be online, and that's obviously has it is useful in somewhere like El Salvador where they have intermittent connectivity to the internet. But it's also, it's useful anywhere. Like it's useful. I can have this in my pocket, and then I can just kind of whip it out, generate an invoice, somebody can pay it, and I don't need to worry about internet connection. It's just kind of useful, So this was LNURL POS, recently I updated this because a lot happened. Like LNBits POS did really well, the project, and the company which actually manufactures the boards I was using, which is this T-Display by Liligo, which is a Chinese company. That's again an ESP32, and it's just got a little screen built into it. It's kind of like, a bit like this, like it's a prefabbed board or put together, wrapped together. Well, they actually manufactured like a custom breakout board, which has a nice tough keypad on it. Yeah. So that project did well. So I thought, well, I wanted to get like my online point of sale and my offline point of sale and like smush them together. So they're two different options, and also like with the old versions, you'd have to like encode your server details, your invoice key, whatever, encode it into the Arduino code, which limits how many people can access them, because obviously you've got to have like Arduino installed and pull that shit in. So I also wanted it to generate an access point, so on your computer you can just log into the device itself and then put the details in on a nice form, and then save the details. So I was able to get the online point of sale and the offline point of sale, put them together in here, and then you can have them both, or you can just have one if you want to. And you can input your details in that online form, which is secured behind a password. But then I thought I wanted to add some other functionality as well. So I wanted to add on-chain. So you can also give it an XPub, and then you'll have an on-chain option. Or the on-chain option is basically just generates a fresh address every time you click the star. And then, go back to your point, when I was in El Salvador, I wanted to be able to go into a shop, give them some cash, and get some sats back. Yeah. And they're getting sats by people paying using, Bitcoin Lightning. It makes sense to me for them to have an easy way to sell their Bitcoin back, but at profit. So what I did is I put in another function called LNURL ATM. So what that is it's optional, obviously, but if you put in the details in the back end, then if you have to put in a PIN, and then when you, as a merchant, after you put in the PIN, you can then put in an amount, press the start, and it will make one of those LNURL withdraw QR codes, the same QR code which I'm using on my ATM. So somebody could go in and they could use it for a refund, say, but it also means you can be a meat bag ATM. So I can. And also in the extension itself in LNBits, you can set a percentage. So for the ATM, you might add an extra 10% for yourself, for selling your sats. That means in El Salvador, I could go into a shop, I can give them $10, and then I can get like $9 worth of sats back. Then they can just use the same point of sale which they're using for taking payments to then pay for people to be able to buy sats off them. You could also, I think what I need to do is to add some like caveats, so like being able to restrict the amount that people can take out every day or something, just for security purposes, in case someone breaches it or steals it, they want to take all your money. But yeah, essentially it's a meat bag ATM. And I do know that in some parts, I don't know if it's in South Africa, but I know in some parts of like Lagos, for example, like it's if you go to often ATMs are actually humans with like a card machine. And so they call it a POS actually, but that's how you like deposit and get cash from your card. Do they have that in South Africa? Is that like I didn't know whether that's an African wide thing or just in certain parts of Africa. Yeah.
I've definitely not seen that here. Like our banking system is pretty advanced, like is ATM all over the place. But we
I just thought maybe like in the
but I could definitely see how this works, because now essentially what the issue that's happening with some of the vendors that are accumulating sats in the township in Mossel Bay is they're saving their sats, but some of them have got to go and buy more stock, right? And like maybe only 5% of their customers are buying using sats, so that's cool. They can afford to keep 5% of their revenue and just keep it in Bitcoin. But sometimes they need to liquidate. So having the option to sell Bitcoin out of their own liquidity pool to like whoever in the community wants to buy, first off, KYC free. So that's amazing. And secondly, like for anyone who in that area to buy sats is a mission. Like where they're going to go buy Bitcoin. They got to get onto an exchange. They don't have proof of address, so they can't get KYC because they live in a shack and they don't have title deeds. They don't have like municipal bills, etc. they can use. So actually getting KYC is a really big barrier to entry. And if you want to buy 10 Rand worth of Bitcoin, like it's not worth it, So this would be phenomenal for these guys running these shops to be able to go both ways.
Yeah, exactly. And if you say to them, look, you can put a percentage as well, and you can make a margin for yourself.
Yeah.
Actually, it's kind of cheeky because in the new LNUL POS, you can also set a margin just for when someone's making a payment. So you could charge like a transaction fee, like add a little extra percent for yourself. It's a bit cheeky. But no, it's I think that's the way to do it. Is to kind of empower local merchants. And actually, I think so. Go on.
I think it's important for people, they might not be aware, people listening, that this is an open source project. So for merchants to use this software is totally free. You don't have to pay someone's coming to the installation, and this hardware is super cheap, right? How much is that device?
Right. So we have a number of options, don't we? So we have actually the Bitcoin POS, as I called it, not realizing the Bitcoin POS was a shitcoin, by the way, but it is. So it's ruined my SEO, but there we are. Too late now. I'm all in. I'm gonna have to beat them down the rankings. We're going to have to beat them down the rankings. This version, which is just, I got 3 different versions actually. Well, 4 different versions, I suppose. You could just use the T display and a keypad, and then make a box. We got 3D printed box, laser cut boxes, whatever. Make a Lego box, whatever. That'll cost you about $10, I suppose. No, less. Sorry, about $8. $8, $9, right? This version, which is the built-in keypad, T-display module thing altogether, that's going to cost you about $15, $12, $15. I have a bare bones version, which uses literally an ESP32, and then has a screen, which kind of looks like this screen, but it's not an e-paper screen, it's a TFT screen. So it's the same screen, which is inside this thing, and a keypad. And that's about $7, $8 to make. But these are off the shelf. I know they look like small components, you expect to see in a factory or something, but this is actually a development board, off the shelf. If you were to do this seriously and then fabricate some of your own boards with keypad, screen, and the SP32 built in, I think you could get the price down easily to under $5 per unit. And then there is also this one as well, the because this did well in room 77, and the kit actually comes with this cool little charging dock thing. Yeah. So you can plug the charging dock in. That's magnetic too, so it'll stick to that.
Stick it on a wall.
Yeah. You can stick it on a wall, yeah. And then you can just pop that in, take it off, take a payment, pop it back in, it's charging itself. It's pretty cool. That's $70 or something. But you can change the face and also turn it into a Game Boy, so kind of worth it, I suppose. So yeah, no, super cheap, all free and open source, and I've given a whole bunch of different options, and I encourage people, because there's a gazillion different, as long as you're using an ESP32 based board, then there's a gazillion different options for screens. I'm using the most used screen library, so you can just change the settings, change where the cursor is on the screen, and you could adapt all the GUI stuff to fit any screen pretty much. So yeah, take it, do whatever you will with it. It's free and open source. The software is free and open source as well.
So what I find super interesting about LNBits is that you guys have figured out how to do split payments. So there's a model where you can fund a merchant, you can give them the machine for free, and then because of split payments, you can take 2% of every payment, 1% of every payment until the machine is paid off, the POS is paid off, plus your margin. So some Bitcoiner who knows how to put these things together can put the hardware together, go out into the local township, get all the merchants on board, and give them these POSs for free, and then just do split payments. On every transaction.
You don't even need to do split payments. No, because you can in LNBits itself, in the when you set up LNBits, you can put in a percentage, so you can charge a transaction fee. So yeah, absolutely, this is what I've been thinking about, because there have been a couple of big Bitcoin bag holders who are I want to make thousands of them and dump them here and dump them there. And I'm no, let's just be a bit more clever. Let's just teach that local kid in that community who's capable of running a node and LNBits on top of it. Teach him how to set these up, and then he sets them up. Like you say, he just gives them to shops. They're using his LNBits install, and then he's charging a transaction fee. And then he turns around to them and he says, after a while, if they're using it a lot and they're interested in it, he could even say, "Oh well, if you want to." And he pays for the hardware just via these transaction fees. You can say to them, look, if you want to run your own node, I can show you how to do that. I can maintain it for a fee. And then there's a whole little business there, which you can set up for as I said, that's $15 or what. If you were to get a version, buy a little box for it, I think you can get Bitcoin Coffee on Twitter. He's got a really nice box which he's made. It's on the repo, but he has a shop as well, so you can buy the box. So for $20. So say you make 5 of these for $20 with batteries and everything, chargers, whatever, and you give those to, that's $100, right? $100 investment, And then if you've got your Lightning node running on a computer, on a VPS, I mean, I got a tutorial for setting up a C Lightning node with LNBits on a VPS. And it uses a really cool pruned node thing for you. I mean, we use it on LNBits.com. So it's not heavy on data, and it takes like 20 minutes to set up, and it costs you like $5 a month to run. Okay, so they do that. They have that. It's constantly online. It's on a VPS. They set up their Lightning node, and then they manufacture these. So you're talking like $110, and they set up a business. And then they can be getting transaction fees for that business. And it's the same actually with the ATM. So, the next step with the offline point of sale, and a lot of people thought about this was, if you have a vending machine, you input what you want, and then the same process happens, but you're not inputting an amount. You're just saying, I want, something off row 1 or row 2 or row 3, and they've got set prices in the back end. And then you make a payment, and then you get a PIN, and then you input the PIN, and then that gives you the product from the vending machine. The same though, I mean, that thing's like $200 to make, $250 to make the whole thing. So you can make a bunch of those, put them out into your local community, and start building just like a tiny little business. I think that's the way to do it. I think it's encouraging that kind of behavior,
It financially incentivizes the Uncle Jim model, essentially.
Yeah.
Because
it's really nice.
You got to take that one trusted person who's a Bitcoiner and he wants to, proliferate Bitcoin through his community. But how do you incentivize it? Like you run out of level charity over time,
Well, I'm gonna have to make a bounty for this because I've been talking about this for a few months now and I haven't done it and I haven't had time to do it. So I'm gonna have to gas some people to put some sats together to make some sort of bounty for it. But what I really want is a referral system. So if that lad who's got whoever that girl who's got that LNBits installed, that server set up, that they can give a wallet, because I mean you could just get rid of this, if you wanted to. You could just give them the on their phone, there's a really nice extension for a point of sale. So they could just have, if they've got a good internet on their phone in the shop, they could just have a point of sale. What I want is for because they could just go to that shop and say, here's the wallet with the point of sale, and then here's also a link. I'm going to charge you 2% per transaction, right, for offering you the service for free. But here's a link. If you pass this link on to your friend, you're going to get some of that percentage. And then have like a trickle down referral link system, which then incentivizes that person to pass on the link, to pass on the link, to pass on the link. So eventually, and that's using split payments. So eventually, for the fee, and the fee just comes into the wallet of the person running the node. Eventually, they'll just look at their wallet. Maybe not even like the person who set up the node, but like the hairdresser they first introduced to it. And then the hairdresser who onboarded the shop, onboarded the garage, onboarded the blah, blah, blah. They'll just be sat there and they'll just be seeing these sats streaming into their wallet, and they won't know where it's coming from. It's just coming from fees, transaction fees from further down the line. I really want to build it into LNBits, just this like referral system to sort of propagate someone's LNBits install.
Man, this is perfect for the Bitcoin and custody setup, because what they do. So how Bitcoin and custody started was there's a NPO that Adman runs called the Surfer Kids. So he's basically runs a surf school, and it's all about like teaching kids personal responsibility. So like show up 3 times a week to come surf, learn how to surf for years. And if they if they stop showing up, they're out. And then they eventually become coaches, and he pays them salaries. And now, with the Bitcoin Acassies, he's taken those coaches, he's taught them about Bitcoin, and they're the guys going into the township, signing up merchants and onboarding merchants. So for these guys to start earning referral fees and start earning a fee splits out of the stores they brought on board, like that's the answer, man. Like that's how you get this. That's how you light a fire under this thing.
Another one I wanted to do is just send a bunch of these out to like Bitcoin meetups, and then say to the meetup, say, look, here's 3 points of sale, right? Give them for free, onboard your local cafe, local bar, whatever, and then just say to them, find someone who wants to accept Bitcoin, give them one of these points of sales, and then say to them, we're going to give you this for free, but we're going to charge a transaction fee for it's like 2% or whatever, or we'll
anything less than a card machine payment.
Yeah.
Like,
or
so
we'll give you this.
3%.
Yeah. Or we'll give you this device, and for the first, even though it only costs like $20 all in, we're going to give you this device, but for the first $40, we're going to take the $40 to pay for the device, right?
Yeah.
Then they say to the cafe, we're going to hold a Bitcoin meetup here next Thursday, and we're all going to be buying drinks, or the bar, we're going to buy a couple $100 worth of drinks. So for the bar, they've probably spent, obviously maybe $20 or $15. Well, I don't know what their markup is, but they've managed to get this thing for relatively cheap. Yeah. The meetup, they onboard somebody, they have a great time, and then the bar also gets to accumulate some sats as well and have that first Bitcoin experience. I think the power of meetups, I think get these things out to meetups, like they could really help kind of properly, because in any Bitcoin meetup you go to around the world, there's a bunch of people who really just want to onboard local merchants and set something up where they can accumulate some sats. And they could do that through like a transaction fee system.
Man, we're going to do this because I'm organizing a meetup here in Cape Town next month. So I'm going to get a couple of those from you, get our local bar on the road here set up, and that's where we do it. Because
someone went to go on.
That meetup, like when everyone's there buying beers and buying pizzas and doing the thing, that'll pay for the hardware 10 times over in one night.
Yeah. Absolutely, and you could put a markup on the actual. They could make a little bit of money for themselves because they could put a markup on it, like a reasonable markup because it's so cheap. But yeah, no, there was. I love that stuff. I love like someone. I had a friend send me a picture. He went to a random bar somewhere in Central America. I mean, it wasn't else. This was way before the El Salvador stuff. And he was like, "Yo, dude," and the guy had one of these behind the bar, and he's accepting Bitcoin on it. And I think he was stoked because he was like the first Bitcoin he'd walked in forever. But I was just like, he sent me this picture. I was like, how is that there? Yeah, how did it make it all the way
Bitcoin evangelism, man.
Yeah, incredible. I love that sort of stuff. So getting these things out into the wild. But it's time to organize all this stuff. This is the thing. Biggest problem I'm always kind of butting up against is time. And then it's like, how do you remedy that? Do you get investment, and then do you pay some people to do some of these things, or do you? I don't know how to do it. I think I like the franchise model's good because you're teaching somebody who can then go teach somebody else, who can go teach somebody else, who can teach, and it kind of propagates out that way. So I think it's just a case of sitting down, putting together some videos for like, this is how you set up a business selling Bitcoin ATMs, Bitcoin points of sale. This is how you set up a business, for the vending machines or just the LNBits store, for example. And then putting together some resources which are pretty easy to access. That's probably the first step.
Then you partner with the guys at Exonumia. So I don't know if you're familiar with Exonumia, but they're an open source project that translates Bitcoin works into indigenous African languages. So they translate like the Bitcoin standard, they're translating websites, they're translating anything to do with Bitcoin into Xhosa, Zulu, Swahili, and it's all open source. So they just find contributors who take these works and then they do the translation. So they've raised some funding to actually pay some translators to do some works. Nice. But like, this is how you get like your videos and your tutorials translated into Xhosa so that they can propagate through the local township. Because one thing about Africa, man, is like the entrepreneurial hustle is the strongest here. Like it's stronger than anywhere on earth, because obviously like necessity is the mother of all innovation. So if I really think this is the answer, because you put together a little short video, how you run your own Bitcoin business.
Yeah, $100. Set your payments business for $100. Yeah.
And you can do seed funding by local Bitcoiners who've got a bit of cash. Like, cool, I'll front you the $100, but I'll do the fee split until you've paid me back the $100, because I'll take 2% of all the transactions that come through. Yeah. So it teaches people responsibility and that they've got to pay back, their creditors. But man, it really can become viral. Because in South Africa we've got 50% youth unemployment. So these guys are looking for any opportunity.
And these are people. These are people who know money as well, aren't they? Like,
oh yeah.
they may not have that much money to hand to
but they know
interact with, but they know how to bloody work with money.
Totally. And they are astute. They know how to count their pennies. Like they know how to hustle. They know how to bargain with people. Like it's definitely it's the.
This is like the. This is what got me excited about some of the El Salvador stuff. When you see kind of the fruit seller on the street, this little old lady, like wizened old lady, hasn't got a bank account, and now she's suddenly got access to the digital. I mean, it may not work this iteration around because whatever, but just the idea of empowering that little old lady who's got very limited resources, but if she has access to like the open market of digital assets, then she could turn those small amount of resources into quite a lot of resources, I imagine. Because they just know money in a way which other people don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And so on that on that point, like where do you see Bitcoin and Lightning, specifically Lightning, going now that it's moving into the third world? Like how do you see the network growing and changing over time?
I mean, I think the next logical step, and it's again, it's kind of controversial among Bitcoiners who want like Bitcoinization of everything. I think fair enough. We all want that, but I do think the next logical step is stable coins, like a federated stable coin model. So like El Salvador, for example, like it's great that the old lady's got access to this digital asset market, and she's got access to Lightning Network, and she can do digital payments. She can take money for her fruit, and she can go buy a coffee in Starbucks, whatever. Like that's digitally, that's incredible. But what sucks is like she takes money for her fruit, and then Elon Musk tweets something out, and then her subsistence wage, which she's living on, it's just gets cut in half because of Elon Musk. You can't get around the fact that Bitcoin's incredibly volatile and makes it for day-to-day payments makes it tricky to use. Particularly if it's in contrast to other currencies which are being used at the time. So I think the next logical step for El Salvador is on Liquid, if you make like a Liquid token, and Liquid is federated, so it's federated amongst sort of 20 odd signatories and from these different financial institutions. So you could have the same model where you could have maybe your coin token could be federated across geographical regions in a country, for example, and then peg that coin to something stable, or a couple of different currencies which are quote unquote stable, or some assets, and then you can have Lightning on top of that. So the payment rail system is exactly the same to what everyone's been getting used to, but they just have this option which is stable. Like this is the thing. This is a savings technology. You can put some money in, save some money in, and then currently the savings technology. Eventually, that everyone will just be using that, obviously. But for the meantime, also you have access to this stable coin, which is also on top of Bitcoin. It's like Bitcoin, Liquid, Lightning. Or something like Liquid, right? So it's also on top of Bitcoin, but it's just stable, and also it's like local. So because people like a local currency, they like the Welsh pound, they like the they like to. There's one of the big things in the euro when everyone switched to the euro. Although there was a lot of currency issues, people were really quite sad about losing kind of their national identity, which they felt was represented through their currency. And I do think there's something to that. Like it's something we've had as humans for a long time. So. Yeah, that to me seems like the next logical step, and I imagine it will happen in somewhere like El Salvador. Like it'll just be like, okay, well, this is a stable coin you can use. I think people are trying to work out ways around it using markets and stuff to get stability. There was a thread on Twitter, and I remember Adam Back came in. He's like, yeah, technology's all there, just someone needs to build it, and it's. I very much agree, and I think it won't be as decentralized as well. I mean, you'll have a lot of Bitcoin's properties because it's built on top of Bitcoin. But it is federated, so it's not as decentralized as Bitcoin. But even if El Salvador made the El Salvador dollar as a Liquid sidechain token, and it was federated geographically, that fiat would still be gazillion times better than like the US dollar or the British pound. Like it'd still be a better version, and they would have made it in like a way which didn't require a central bank. It was actually like corruption resistant, because you would have to co-opt like all these different geographical regions, and maybe you could have some signatories outside of I don't know, I suppose that'd be up to the engineers, whoever makes it, but then maybe you could use some institutional signatories as well for it, as well as having actual like governmental parts. But to me that feels like the next logical step. If people are going to use Bitcoin as an actual money in the wild with Lightning Network, it just kind of feels like it needs to happen. And then eventually, when Bitcoin has enough liquidity in it, which it will do, that won't be necessary, and the switch out will be really easy. It's just because you're still using like something like Lightning Network and whatever side chains you're using on the top of it. So it's I kind of feel with Bitcoin, my analogy for Bitcoin is that the gold analogy, in that when people first discovered gold, it was this beautiful, heavy, shiny rock on the ground, and they're like, well, what can we do for this? And I'm like, well, I tell you what, I'll give you this beautiful kind of rare shiny rock if I can have your house. And they're like, okay, yeah, fair enough. And we started passing it around for value, and it wasn't until thousands of years later, like we start to realize all these different commodity use cases which exist for gold. You can use it in like dentistry and electronics. We use it heavily, obviously, for jewelry because it looks pretty, whatever. So it wasn't until, but I do think that Bitcoin itself on chain is a commodity, and yes, we use it for value transfer between each other. But in a Bitcoin on-chain transaction, you can pack in a lot of data, and a Bitcoin transaction is saying this event happened at this specific point of time, and we're going to use all this hash rate and power to prove that existed at that specific point in time. And you can do a lot with that commodity in the digital world, which goes way beyond just bare bones value transfer from one person to another. So I kind of envision that in the future, our grandchildren or our grandchildren, they'll be saying, what, you did an on-chain transaction? And it'll be like the thing which is occasionally done, and then all sorts of industry and whatever else and value is passed through that transaction at the same time. So I think it's just more and more we'll find commodity use cases for Bitcoin, and we'll move away from on-chain transactions to off-chain transactions, and Bitcoin transactions will just be there to say this thing happened at this point in time, and there'll be like Merkle trees of data all attached to those transactions. So I'm excited to kind of see all that, because it is slowly going that way anyway, isn't it? So
yeah, it definitely is. I mean, you just look at El Salvador. Like you've got all these people in El Salvador using Lightning. Like they're not really using. I mean, on-chain is happening there, I'm sure, but if the whole of El Salvador was using on-chain, the fees would be through the roof by now, and they're not. Fees are still low. There are spikes that I see on a daily basis, because we run a Bitcoin business here in South Africa called Bitvice, and we like a self-custody Bitcoin solution. And when we're doing transactions, we see these like weird spikes in the mempool kind of on a daily basis. So I don't know if that's Chivo wallet that's settling on-chain transactions.
I doubt it.
Yeah,
Chivo wallet's a piece of shit.
Yeah, so I've heard, right? But I mean,
when I was
like on the back end though, on the back end, someone is putting liquidity into the Lightning wallets, right? So there must be some on-chain stuff happening there.
Chivo wallet, most transactions are between Chivo to Chivo, because you can use like a phone number or an email or whatever, or a social security number to send transactions. They're not Bitcoin transactions; they're database flips, just in Chivo. And then if you navigate through the menus on Chivo, you can get to this is how it was when I was there in El Salvador. You can get the on-chain option, and then if you navigate through some more menus, you can get to the Lightning option. So you can actually get to the Lightning, generate like a Lightning invoice or pay a Lightning invoice, which then didn't work very well. Like it wouldn't say that it had actually gone through when it had gone through. So it's quite a sort of experience which would create animosity between customer and merchant. But I mean, this is a Bitcoin being rolled out by a state. So we had all this like when Jack Mallers went on stage and he's talking about Strike, he's talking about remittances, and all that was very exciting. And then when I was there, I saw nothing at Strike. Like state had elbowed it out. Yeah, no, nothing. And it's just been elbowed out by state. Everyone's got this Chivo wallet no one's ever heard of before. Crappy UI, nothing to do with any Bitcoin project I've ever heard of. Owned by a company called Athena. And then, I have like this weird film experience where this guy, this like gringo at the end of a bar, this old guy was like, yeah, you're one of the Germans. And I was like, no, I'm not one of the Germans. But because I was hanging out with the Germans, he's like, I got some stories to tell you. Come here. I was in Nam. And he's drinking this beer and he's like saying about how he did like reconnaissance stuff in Nam and also going to tech. And they said he's been helping. But I won't go into I think it was just but anyway, he first told me this idea that Chivo was owned by a company called Athena. And then, because I kept seeing these wrapped cars with Athena written on them, driving around everywhere. And then I see like these half-built projects, like a vending machine, like an Athena vending machine. And I was like, what's this Athena thing? I was,
they do all the ATMs, right?
Well, yes. Well, I think they've resold the ATMs from somewhere else. But anyway, so they're rolling out the infrastructure, and then this old guy, and then a few other people, they start telling me that Athena's part owned by Bekele's brother. So you're just like, this is what you expect.
Classic.
It's like, this is what we expect to happen. And then I didn't.
Yeah, of course.
There was no Jack Mallers at the conference. I didn't see him. I didn't. The Strike. I don't know if he was there. He was there very briefly, and there was nothing to do with Strike there, and there wasn't any of the amazing Bitcoin projects out there, which we've been building for years. There wasn't sign of any of those. It was all kind of new power grabs by other new companies. So it's as you would expect. But I mean, hopefully Bitcoin Beach, they'll fight through and they'll,
Yeah. Coming from Africa, I know all about that. Like, if there's power and money to be grabbed by government, it will be grabbed. No matter how noble the intentions of the project are, whether it be like healthcare or Bitcoin, like they'll grab it.
Well, they do it here, man. They do the exact same thing here. Like it's we have there's plenty of examples where the great one was like track and trace, and we spent like, billions, I think, on this track and trace app, which was terrible. And but at the time, Germany they'd made a track and trace app which was really good. Like the way the Chaos Communication Club, they're kind of like computer activists in Germany. And they're the people who kind of kept WikiLeaks going when that was being attacked. They wrote this like list of properties any track and trace app would have to have in order for them to endorse it. And they it was about good, bright on stuff about privacy. And
like anonymized data and all that stuff.
Yeah, right? All that stuff. And then Germany developed this great free and open source track and trace app any other country could use. And like at that time, we were only just starting to build our app, and our app was absolutely terrible. We spent a fortune on it. We could have just used this free and open source thing, which they built.
Nah, but there's you can't get that sweet corruption money if you use this free.
Exactly. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem. Yeah.
You can't get those contracts.
One of Boris's girlfriends got shares in the company which built the app. Yeah.
One of Boris's kids. Yeah. That is unaffiliated to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's always how it's going to go, though, I suppose. But with Chivo, so in El Salvador, you can use any Lightning wallet, right? So I'm pretty sure you're probably going to see people getting pissed off with the shitty user experience, and they'll just move to Blue Wallet.
This was nice to see. Whatever. But you need people there to educate them. So we go into a shop and they'd be like, "You try and use Chivo, it would break," and then we'd say, "Oh, have you got another wallet?" And then they would have, what did they have? A lot of them had Ibex, an Ibex Lightning wallet. Ibex,
so that's from Guatemala, right?
They're a bank in Guatemala, and they're cool, man. I hung out with those guys, and they've got a solution which a product which they're using which runs on top of LNBits as well. So I like them even more. But they a lot of people had that running on their phone as well, and that would work really nicely.
Hang on, so you got a bank in Guatemala running on LNBits.
Yeah, it's crackers. It's so cool. But also scary because we're still beta, so we're like, should you be using LNBits? I don't know.
Fucking YOLO, why not?
Well, they just had like a really simple business model. I don't know if they're still using it, but or they're using it in a more complicated way now. But the model was that if a shop needed to accept Bitcoin, then they would give them just the point of sale, because in the LNBits point of sale extension, it's a shareable point of sale. It can't connect to your wallet, your LNBits wallet. All it can do is request invoices, but you can't even see, like, you can't use the keys or anything to see like how much funds are in your wallet. It's completely disconnected. So you can just get up on your phone. It's got a really nice responsive GUI. So you can then give that to all the people working in your bar or cafe, and it's in the local fiat currency or whatever. Bitcoin. No, they can't see your Bitcoin. It's super simple to use. So they're literally just giving them those on their phones. Here's a point of sale. Go use it, and the shops are using it. And then the shop then turns around to Ibex and says, "Okay, can I have the cash now?" And Ibex just goes, "Here you go," and then they just delete the funds from the wallet. So that was super cool.
It's like a trusted model.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a bank.
But it's a bank, so
Yeah, but they don't need to actually have a bank account with them, which is kind of interesting.
That's cool.
It's kind of cool. So it was just they're able to roll it out pretty quickly, which is I just like the idea. It was like one extension created like a whole business model. Again, the business model which you could, if you want people, if people like in El Salvador had to accept Bitcoin, but maybe they just want the cash. So they got some great solutions. So they got some of the stuff they were showing me in there too. I can't say anything about it, but when I saw them in El Salvador and I was chatting to them quite a bit, and some of the stuff they had in the pipeline they were talking about, I was like, these guys fuck. Like they're not just but they like they're techies and they're interested in the technology and they want to break new ground. And they're building stuff which like I haven't thought about. Like I don't know anyone else thought about. Like I thought that was super cool. Like it was nice to see. Yeah, like you see these companies like a Chivo, and then you see it next door to running alongside something like an Ibex, and then you're like, this is what I want if you're going to have like a centralized company which is going to succeed in that country, then this is a company I want. It's got good people in it.
Yeah. I've heard Max Kaiser bang on about the Ibex guys. He's pretty.
Has he?
He speaks pretty highly of them. Yeah. I've heard him bang on about them, which is it's pretty good getting praise from him. But so I work in tech as well, and just the cost of developing software, man, is crazy. So if you are a merchant and you want to get a Bitcoin wallet, like there's no ways like a small or even medium sized merchants can be able to afford to like develop that tech. So open source is the only way to go with this kind of stuff. Really, if you want to roll, because Lord knows there's hundreds of Bitcoin wallets, there's dozens that are open source. Like why reinvent the wheel? Just take open source code.
100%.
If you need to repurpose it. But like you're you hack to clear.
Yeah, like Blue Wallet. Like Blue Wallet's a great free and open source wallet. Take it, and like I go from Blue Wallet, like people who work on Blue Wallet, they're super hospitable, man. If you had if a country was gonna, roll out Bitcoin, and then they turn around and said to Blue Wallet, look, we want to build some sort of more kind of localized version of Blue Wallet, they would help them. Like they would put in 3 hours and stuff to help that make that happen. So this was the thing which disappointed me about ourselves. But like you say, good solutions are rising to the top. Hopefully they haven't all been put off by the fact that Bitcoin's had such a hammering in the price wise. Why do you think that happened, by the way? What's your understanding of it?
Man, I don't know. So when you've been in Bitcoin for a number of years, like you just stop. I'm sure, as you know, you've been in longer than me, but like you just stop paying attention to price.
Yeah, I don't either. No, I don't really pay attention.
I don't even know what the price is currently. Like it doesn't really bother me because whatever.
I get it. Sometimes I'll be like, if we have like a sharp fall, I'll be doing something with my hardware, for example, and I'll be like, oh man, there's a bug, it's not working properly, so I don't get the conversion rate properly. And then I'm like, oh, okay, no, if I can Elon Musk tweet something again.
Bitcoin's down 40%, okay, and your heart rate doesn't change at all. Whereas 3 years ago, you'd be like, oh my god, I gotta fucking sell, and you're like, no,
it's a horrible feeling, isn't it?
It's a degenerate way to behave. But I think Bitcoin is still correlated to conventional financial markets, right? So what I'd imagine is if there's a crash in the stock market, these guys have to unwind their profitable positions to pay down their margin calls. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So so if you've got a Bitcoin position that's up 80% and you've got a position in Tesla that's up 20% and then Tesla crashes and you're getting margin called, you're going to sell out of your profitable position to cover the one that's tanked. So.
Has it been a stock market crash? Have I missed something?
Yeah.
Oh, has there?
Oh, no. Stock market's tanked in the last few days. So now obviously the Fed's going to run the printing press, because they can't let the stock market crash. They got to keep the Ponzi going as long as possible. But I don't know. I don't know how much longer they can do it for, because obviously inflation is rearing its head. So now they're in a bit of a bind. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, man, the price volatility on Bitcoin doesn't bother me anymore. But obviously, that's because I've been in it for a long time. If you're new to Bitcoin, you don't have that luxury because you bought in at whatever 60,000, and now it drops 40,000. Obviously, you're gonna shit yourself. It depends how much money you put into it, obviously. But
it's more that because for me, I really noticed the kind of sentiment turn with when Bukele started talking about the Bitcoin City thing. I think there was a lot of people had hope for El Salvador, but this Bitcoin City thing, everyone was like, "Oh, okay, you're just like a crazy guy who wants to build a city and put a big statue of yourself in the city." And that kind of felt like a lot of Bitcoiners as well. We would just say, we want this El Salvador experiment to work, but
I really enjoy Bukele for the sole reason that he just doesn't give a fuck when it comes to global institutions. The IMF tweeted at him, or the IMF is like, you got to stop the Bitcoin thing, and he just posts memes at them. He's I don't give a shit about you guys. But he needs to watch out because the CIA and the IMF are going to bomb his plane next time he flies anyway. So
that's generally what they tend to do, isn't it?
Yeah. Central America knows very well about this, but I'm sure he's obviously hyper aware.
This was the thing which really got mixed, in El Salvador, and they didn't really want to, obviously, they would kind of would speak to locals about what they thought about Bitcoin, and locals who were kind of into Bitcoin, and there was one or two who made little sly comments about US hegemony and wriggling out of the power of other countries, which they've got over their country, And I'm like, yeah, right on. That's what it's about, man. Like that's really why you guys should be adopting Bitcoin. And this is why, like, if they made like a federated, El Salvador dollar, like if it was done in such a way that the US couldn't attack it, like that's the most important quality. Yes. It's uncorruptible by themselves, and then also by big legacy power structures like US Exonumia. And you look at South and Central America and the past, since the Second World War, and how much they've been just like fiddled with by the US
since
interests.
Since Europeans arrived.
Since Europeans did the same thing,
basically. Since they came and stole their gold. That's the way it's been. So this is hopefully it's a new dawn for them. They can get away from it. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting because Max Kaiser was on Kitco News the other day, and he was talking about a second country that's going to be adopting Bitcoin as legal tender soon. In that region.
Tonga? Oh, in that region. Okay, is that
that region?
Could it be Guatemala? I think the government in Guatemala are quite against it, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, he mentioned Guatemala, but then he said he can't say, so he's probably trolling. But who knows? It'll be interesting to see.
Well, I was thinking that the borders between these countries, they're like European borders. They're very fuzzy. So the town, in one town they're accepting Bitcoin, everyone's talking about Bitcoin, and then in the next town, it's based, they probably still identify as El Salvadorian rather than Guatemala, but they're technically in Guatemala, that sort of town, and they're half their family live in the town next door, which is El Salvadorian, and they can do the Bitcoin thing. That adoption is going to bleed into and then you end up with adoption, like the sort of Bitcoin adoption all of us would approve of, as opposed to top down. It's like something just building momentum from the bottom,
grassroots.
Yeah, and then something which people demand. Then they're like, we want this thing which El Salvador have.
Yeah, for me, I think Nicaragua is a very strong candidate because Nicaragua has been fucked with by the US for a very long time. So dollarized. Same story. I mean, I don't know if you ever read the book Dark Alliance, which was written by a journalist called Gary Webb. Essentially, it's about the crack epidemic in the US in the 80s.
Yeah. What with the Contras and how the Contras were employed.
It was the Iran Contra scandal. Yeah. So he was the journalist who broke that when journalists still used to exist. He broke that story, and it was actually the first news agency or newspaper that had a website. And the first stories they published was the Dark Alliance series, which is all about how the CIA was facilitating. Or turning a blind eye to the Contras flying coke into the US, in exchange, bringing arms back and money back, and then that coke was then being turned into crack and had the crack epidemic. Because
we had a very similar thing with the IRA, in that they were infiltrated by drugs. They ended up selling a lot of drugs to pay for guns, and in many ways, it's kind of screwed a lot of the principles which were behind the IRA.
Because we're very anti-drugs, right?
Exactly.
Drug dealers and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it becomes kind of like this rot, which starts to rot out the core of the movement. So there may be with the CIA, there's an element of, they're wanting to kind of rot out I suppose the Contras were fighting on their behalf, weren't they, against the
Sandinistas, against the
Sandinistas, against the commies.
Yeah. And so what happened was Reagan wanted to fund the Contras
but he couldn't, could they? Because there was a bill which went through or something.
Yeah, because Congress was like, not a fucking chance. You're not going to keep funding this war machine in Nicaragua.
Horrible,
it's not happening.
bloody war, which is killing people there.
So then he just went behind Congress's back and got the CIA to do it for him. And how do they get the money to do it? Obviously that was the Iran Contra scandal, right? Like you send weapons to Iran. And then it comes back via Nicaragua. They ship the drugs, and the CIA takes a cut off the top.
Yeah.
But
there's another very good book called The Jakarta Method, which is about CIA meddling in South Central Indonesia, but also just South Central America as well in general. And it's so in Indonesia, that some of the lengths they go, some of the stories about the CIA, what they get up to, trying to sabotage, and like one of the I think it's in the Jakarta Method, where they a lot of the with the Red Scare stuff, a lot of the what they would call commies, a lot of them were just like socially progressive Democrats in some of the movements in and around South and Central America. But by cracking down on them so hard, they just wanted to like improve infrastructure, like have like
them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, had they just been left, like a lot of those countries could very well be like a country in Europe or something,
like Germany.
Yeah, exactly. Just have decent roads and autobahn. But it radicalizes them absolutely. So then you end up with they install some far right dictator who opens up all the natural resources to US interests and companies, and then the locals are like, we don't want that thing. We want this thing right over here. We want the commies. And then there's just this constant swing between these two political ideologies. You get that instability. We were talking off air before, I think, about how it takes generations to like build longer, hundreds of years to build stability, it's
very short to ruin it. Very short space of time
easy
to destabilize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. And so I don't know, most people abroad wouldn't know about this probably, but some shit kicked off in Mozambique, which is a neighboring country to South Africa, middle of last year, towards the end of last year. And it's right in the northern part of Mozambique, which is super remote, like super, super remote. And I don't know if you know much about Mozambique, but it's about 3,500 km long. Like, it's a really big, really long country. And the reason why it was kicking off, most people assumed at the time, was because the oil and gas or natural gas was discovered there a few years back. And I actually used to work in that northern region on an island. I used to skipper sailboats up there. And the shit kicked off like right there in that region where I used to work. And so this little town up there called Pemba was like a sleepy fishing village. And they discovered gas offshore. And then they've developed it into like this massive gas facility. It's quite a nice natural harbor. So everyone just assumed the rebels were fighting to try to claim the oil and gas fields. And Total, the French oil and gas firm, was there. They got chased out by these rebels. And these rebels were brutal, right? They were coming in. It's a Muslim part. So Mozambique used to be a Portuguese colony. So the southern part is Christian and the northern part is Muslim. So these Muslim rebels were coming in and they were just decapitating people, chopping their arms and their hands off. And this little village where I used to go and pick up supplies was the second town that was hit by these rebels. It was a full-on massacre. And they, that was horrific. But they went into these oil and gas areas and kind of burnt everything down, killed everyone. But then they didn't take over the facilities. So that didn't make sense that like they were after the oil and gas, because you would think Israelis would seize the oil and gas because then they could facilitate their rebel industry. So then a group of South African mercenaries were brought in by the Mozambican government to try to solve this problem and deal with the rebels. And all these mercenaries are like old, grizzled, 50, 60-year-old dudes who used to be in the South African Defense Force back in the day, who used to fight in the border war, and a couple of ex-Rhodesians, so Zimbabwean guys who fought in the Bush War. So these guys like know what they're doing, but they're quite old. Yeah. But so then the stories started coming out from these guys as to what's actually happening on the ground. And what's happening is the majority of the heroin trade, which comes out of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran, comes down past the Gulf of Aden, down the east coast of Africa, and it used to make landfall Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. But then Kenya and Tanzania upped their naval military presence because of the pirates in Somalia. And they got the US have got a naval presence there, the Chinese, the not NATO, but the Germans are there, the UN Security Council's got a presence there. Yeah. So because Mozambique is such a fucking shithole and there's like no government presence up north, that was the one stretch of coastline where there was no like security presence. So a very large percentages of the world's heroin was making landfall in northern Mozambique. And what's happening was these rebels up there were actually controlling the heroin trade, because it makes landfall, then travels overland through Mozambique down to Durban, which is in South Africa, gets loaded onto ships, and then gets sent to the US and all over the world. So what actually was funding that all of that bullshit up there is the heroin trade. And, it's crazy that the heroin trade in Afghanistan is causing massive instability in northern Mozambique. And what was the US doing in Afghanistan? We know that heroin production went through the roof when the Taliban was kicked off.
I mean,
it comes back to the CIA funding the operations.
We were doing it with the East India Company, weren't we? Because our Brits and their tea trade was our economy was. But because of them. Yeah, well, we enslaved a whole. Well, like I think it was a third of the population of China were on opium. Yeah. And it was so bad, people were like selling their children to get high on opium. And then when they said, the Chinese said, no, we don't want this anymore. And the Chinese emperor closed the ports and wouldn't let the Brits in. We went and killed them all and then forced them to sign a contract.
That was the Boxer Rebellion, right? It was because of that.
That's where they broke all the boxes. Yeah, and that was the Opium War. Something which British people generally just never hear about, never learn about in school. But every Chinese kid hears about and learns about. But yeah, absolutely. Like and that was so we could sell opium to the Chinese and get tea and again, exactly. So it's funny. It's interesting. This throughout history, there's this use of drugs to fund war and to bolster markets as well.
It's awful. It's fucking wild. But yeah, man. Before we get too sidetracked on the drugs and war side, I want to chat to you about NOSTR.
Drugs and war.
The project you've been working on with NOSTR. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's great for empowering drug dealers. We could do a pivot, I suppose. But I suppose that's the whole point.
Bitcoin and NOSTR.
Yeah, public key crypto, isn't it? Public key crypto can be used. I mean, it's the technology for criminals. They're the innovators, as Andreas always said. They're the ones who see value in technology first because they need to make use of it to be able to bypass restrictions. But no, NOSTR, notes and other stuff relays. This is a protocol which has been made by Fiat and a bunch of other Bitcoiners, even though it's got nothing to do with Bitcoin, in which it's like a simple way to do decentralized communication and send information in a kind of decentralized way, which is very hard to censor by outside authorities. You can self-censor, but the kind of kernel for the idea, it's not the whole kernel for the idea, there's a bunch of different influences to it, but it's kind of a nice thread for me because it's kind of personal. So when I made LNBits, one of the first extensions I made, I wanted to like a proof of concept extension. So to show that you can make, with LNBits, you can make an extension for your own thing. So I made this thing called Diagon Alley, which was a decentralized marketplace system. The idea being that you have a market stall, you put all your stuff on, you have all your products, and then you point at kind of an indexer. And then in the index is like the eBay, the front of house, which people go to pay for stuff. But actually everything is handled by your market stall. And then that index is just listing stuff. So if that indexer gets taken out, you can just take your market stall of products and just point at another indexer. So because it's obviously very inconvenient for dark markets when dark markets go down. So it kind of makes a very resilient. It's like a pirate, like if you think of Pirate Bay, like it's very resilient for that reason because it's still, there's still clear net web servers which can be taken out, but it's not the end of the world. People just go and find another Pirate Bay. Yeah, exactly. And if you could prove the person selling the products is the same person who's selling the products over here, then selling the whatever.
You can do that through private public key encryption.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, private public key encryption stuff. So the only people who cared about that idea were me and Fairchaff. We thought it was cool. He kept saying we should make it into a protocol, but I was too noob to kind of understand what it even meant, to be honest. And eventually he extrapolated it all out, generalized it, and then made something called NOSTR, which, so it's kind of got, so it's nice because I kind of feel like I've got like some ownership to its existence by sowing the right seeds into Jaff's crazy little brain. And then so he makes NOSTR, the NOSTR protocol, which is you have client software, and then the client software you have on your client software you have your private key, your public key, and then you sign a little note, a little bit of data, and then you send it to a relay, and then the relay then sends it to other clients if they've signed up, if they've subscribed to your public key. So the example which I first built was NOSTR Twitter. So you'd have a public key, private key, and then you sign a message. And it goes up to the relay, and if someone's following your public key, then they'll get that message, and they can prove that it was you that you published that message. But then also using public key crypto, like we can also so if me and you want to send encrypted data, like a DM, for example, like an encrypted DM, I could take your public key, my private key, squish them together and make a secret. You could do the same thing, take my public key and your private key, squish them together, and you make the same secret, which still blows my mind to this day. And then we can use that secret to encrypt data between each other. but so that was the example I made. And then NOSTR was very quiet for a long period of time. And then Fiat Jaffe now more recently, he's like, he forked the NOSTR Twitter project, and like he's like put on steroids, and he's made Bradle, BRADLE, and that's a very functional NOSTR Twitter client. Like you can have a handle, like you can pick a handle, and you can do like replies and stuff, and I think you can do retweets, and you can like do Twittery things in it. So I have a version of that running on nostr.com. So I was like Roger Ver, like I bagged because I saw that there was immense value in this protocol, this NOSTR protocol thing. I was like, I'm bagging the domain name. So I got the domain name nostr.com, much to everyone's disgust now. They all hate it. So one day I'll shitcoin. So I've got an example of Bradle running on nostr.com. You can go check out. But then there's also examples. I think nostr.rocks as well. Melvin is running a version of it on there too. But basically with nostr, you could build all sorts of things. So you could build a Twitter, you could build a Reddit, you could build a decentralized marketplace. I wrote a little thing about a little README and a GitHub repo about how you could do a decentralized Uber. So in nostr, you have different note kinds. And I said, well, why don't we have a note kind, which is just like a geographical location? So as a client, running my client piece of software, that can tell where I am. So it just takes that geographical location, signs it with my private key, and then sends it up to a relay. And then somebody else who's, say, looking for a taxi, for example, they can subscribe to all events of data coming from within this geographical location. So if I'm a taxi driver, I can like advertise my services. So the client, two pieces of client software, I could have like a taxi piece of client software, and then the customer could have like a customer taxi, like an Uber type thing. And then we can both have reputation as well. So because we're using public key, private key, after the taxi ride, I can like sign a little, feedback for the taxi driver. So we can like build up reputation on there as well. So you could build like a decentralized Uber pretty quickly. And then I think recently, because I was on the Peter McCormack show, and I was talking about this, and I said, my mind then went somewhere else when I was thinking about the decentralized Uber thing, and he went, prostitutes. And I was like, yeah, prostitutes. I was like, it would be a really useful, so if you think about prostitution, like there's no reputation systems which exist. Sort of street prostitution, and then also it's like something which you could run the same sort of software, same client software for customer and merchant, but it's I think it's an incredibly useful tool. So that was the Booba idea. So take Uber, call it Booba. Actually, Booba was originally, because with decentralized Uber, I was going to have it Bitcoin Uber, because I was also going to have the payment method in Bitcoin too. So I was going to make the Boober, BUBER, an LNBits extension where you could also pay for the taxi ride with Lightning as well. But now and I think that's why my mind then went to that other industry, which would be very good for. But yeah, it's super interesting, like what's possible. And also like, so say at the moment I'm making the Diagon Alley, I'm now building the Diagon Alley extension again in LNBits, but NOSTR protocol, compliant. And, I can have DMs. So any DMs which are to my public key, or I can have them pop up in my Diagon Alley. So, but this means that you could have DMs like cross-compatible. So I could be going onto Twitter, and you don't have to, like you could deselect them or select, you could say that you want to subscribe to certain tags or whatever. But in my Twitter, I could have my Twitter DMs turning up in my NOSTR, in my Diagon Alley extension, or I can have, between customer and merchant, like support or whatever, customer support. Or I could have those also turning up in the Twitter if I wanted to. Or I could have the Reddit post style information kind of turning up in my Twitter feed even. So you can have the data can kind of cross post between different clients too, depending on what the client software opts to display or the user opts to display. And it becomes very interesting as well, because, you do have censorship, but the censorship is an optional. Like, so because you're only going to get information to the relays you subscribe to. So for someone like me, where I want like a vanilla Twitter experience, I'm only going to, if there's a relay which is like showing me all sorts of crazy racist stuff, I'll be like, I don't really want that. So I'll probably like disconnect from that relay. And the relays I'm connected to, I'll kind of expect them to have some algorithms to filter that stuff out. So you end up kind of just self-censoring, like you do in life, you know, like when I'm walking about, there's certain parts of the world I don't walk into, and there's some places I don't go. Like I know there's certain conversations I don't have, like with certain people. So that's this kind of user-based, user-oriented,
right?
User-oriented censorship. Yeah, and if you want all that stuff, it's there. Like if you want a dark market, buy and sell drugs on, then just subscribe to that relay, you know, and then use your Diagon Alley extension and do all that shit if you want to. Or you could just sell, you know, candles and bees honey or whatever on your Diagon Alley. So it's quite interesting just as a new dichotomy, and it's been super fascinating because there was an initial kind of excitement where we all built loads of software. Like a bunch of people built some great relays software. So the relays are like those indexes, like they're inconsequential. They're quite dumb and they can be taken out, and you know they're very easy to spin up again, right? So there's a bunch of people making relay software, and then there was a few people we made some sort of clients, you know, client software like for messaging or whatever else. And then there was just quiet for ages. There wasn't really anything happening on NOSTR. And I think actually, you know, it's Fitjeff making this because it kind of gets people's imagination firing. With my NOSTR Twitter client, I would always say to people, I would say, look, like a few weeks worth of work, this could be amazing, but I just haven't got the time to do it, you know, whatever. And then Fitjeff taking it and then actually building it and making it like work properly, I think it's fired everyone's imagination. And now the NOSTR protocol Telegram, which is NOSTR, so NOSTR _ protocol, that our Telegram group. If you go there, you'll see there's like 450, 500 people in the Telegram group, and they're all talking like highbrow developing stuff. It's, you know, it's not idle chit chat. You often get like a noob coming, going, I'm really excited about this thing. Can you tell me more about it? And then everyone points them to the protocol. But generally, it's like people chit chatting about software they're developing. There's some great people in there as well. Like Cux is in there from BTC Pay Server, and Rockstar Dev, and Dolu, and there's some real minds in there. Melvin's in there, so it's giga minds. There's enough giga minds in that group to be able to at least spit something out which is useful.
So just on the relay, it's like if I subscribe to a relay, or what happens if that relay gets taken down and I lose all my contacts? So everyone that I have been
because you're storing all that locally, and it kind of depends. Like relays can store data if they want to, so they could just have like a database of tweets from somebody, for example, and be storing it in case you want to, you know, restore your account or something. Or you could have a relay which maybe just takes your stuff and then like encrypts it and, I don't know, puts it in some zip file or something you can download later. I don't know. You
can have like a self-hosted version and a cloud version kind of simultaneously running.
Yeah, exactly. So I could have a relay running, you know, say if you had a Bitcoin a conference or a meetup or something, you could just have a relay running just for that event, and everyone just connects to that relay. No other relay. We'd all be able to see each other's posts and stuff and like chat to each other, but the outside world would have no contact to it whatsoever because we're not going through these other, you know, public relays.
And then you could burn it when it's all done, when the conference is over. Like you could shut that thing down. And then
I was going to make one of these into a relay. That's something I need to do. Is get an ESP32 because it's quite simple software. And then you could like spin it up, fire it up, turn it on somewhere. And then you could just connect to like the IP address on the network, and then hide it somewhere. I don't know. It's probably completely pointless, but.
In a street lamp, this is a thought I've had for a while. Putting Bitcoin nodes, Lightning nodes, or mesh network nodes in street lamps. You just guerrilla go in there at night so they can power.
ESPMDF, which is the company which manufacture the ESP32 chip, the actual which is this thing here, just this. You know, this is a development board. So this is the microcontroller. They're about £1 each to buy just the microcontroller, and you can, you know, use that. So that would be the thing which you connect your keypad to in your screen and stuff. But obviously you'd have to kind of, because we've got pins here to plug things into, you'd have to have circuitry to be able to do that. So I had a project which I did quite early on where I just took that and I embedded it. I got a cheap keyboard, the sorts of keyboards you get in like a public library or university library or something. Those black Dell, or not Dell, but the cheap ones you get from Amazon.
Really loud ones.
Clunky ones, yeah. So I bought a couple of those, like five quid each. And then I put, because they have a 5-volt power feed, don't they? So I plugged in one of these ESP32s into the keyboard, and I could have it doing some really, black hat stuff, but I didn't. What I had it doing was I just had it so when it powers on, this creates a Wi-Fi access point called by Free Bitcoin, and then you click on it, and then it opens up the Cypherpunk Manifesto as an access point portal thing. Because to this day, I think the Cypherpunk Manifesto is like the best thing to give people if they're like, oh, what is Bitcoin? You're like, well, read that. It's a page, and it's written in 1995, and you can see that this stuff has been built on for quite a long while, and the sort of like the morality behind why we're building these things. Anyway, so they're very powerful. They can do Wi-Fi. You can embed them in stuff which is 5-volt. There's Espressive, they have a really nice development framework called the Mesh Development Framework, and these things they mesh together is so cool. Like they're self-organizing. You can nominate like the master node, or that's what you got. There's the main node, which like connects to your Wi-Fi, for example, because it's closest. It's got the strongest signal. And then if that gets taken out, they'll nominate another one, and then you have these leaf nodes. Oh, it's super cool, and it's self-healing, and you can like split them up. And then when they come back in, if it's like the same mesh, if you get it close enough together again, they'll all join together again into this mesh network. They have like 150 meter range on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Like you can go 200 meters, but you start to go a bit slow. So like you said, because they're £1 each, it's like you can have expensive devices which do long distance.
Yeah.
Or I prefer like a smaller device which does short distance but high bandwidth. So one of the things I wanted to do for ages is take these bad boys, like you say, put them in a light bulb or something, and I say to people in my village, say, can you just put this up in your living room, and then I make like 100 of these, put them in around my village, and then I've got a mesh network then which I could stream like Bitcoin block data, and we can message each other between.
And then they just need to find one access point that's got internet access. So if one person's got satellite internet, they can just hop the transaction data across and then broadcast the rest of the network. So like Kazakhstan, for example,
or satellite,
the government shut the internet down the other day. So if you Bitcoining in Kazakhstan and the internet goes down, in India they did the same. In northern India they shut the internet down multiple times. So if you're a Bitcoiner and you're trying to transmit to the network, you need to find internet connection. So if you can use a mesh network to do that, and if you, like you say, if you've got thousands of these devices spread out all over the country, all meshing together, like that's all. And you just need to find one access point that has satellite internet.
And like there's some good projects actually. There's flipping out. There's a really good German
LochaNet out of
that's a piece of crap. That was a hardware scam. No, I was very vocal because they just had all these lofty promises. They were like, "Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that," and because they ticked these certain points, like Venezuela, Bitcoin, mesh network, people were like, "Here's my money, here's my pre-sale hardware money."
Yeah.
Well, I'm making like hardware projects, right? And I don't do any pre-sale stuff. And like at that point in time, the maker community for hardware stuff was quite small in Bitcoin, and me and a couple of other Bitcoins, we're sort of nurturing it. We're trying to make it grow. And then this company comes in with all these lofty promises, and they're taking all this money from people. And we know it's not going to work. Like they're not going to be able to make the thing which they're saying they're going to make for people. And I was just like, it's going to put people off. Like, because maybe there would be a very worthwhile project which comes forward, and it'll put people off that project because they will think that it's just a hardware scam. So I was quite vocal about it early on. I was like, look, you might not be scammers, but I think you're walking towards that road of becoming like a scammer by making these false promises. And then I did say they had a big row with them, and then they said, oh, we come back at this point and we'll be giving these the devices out which we've manufactured. And I was like, okay. And I turned up and they hadn't done it, and then months later then they do finally release these they honor some of the pre-sales, and they just send them like bare bones hardware which no one can do anything with. And I'm like, okay. And it says look, we're not scammers because we sent out. And I'm like, well, send me one example, one video of somebody actually using one of these devices to do mesh networking, decentralized communication, and this just falls on dead ears and whatever. It's I think they've managed to get away with people just thinking that they were kind of incompetent and not deliberately trying to scam people. And maybe they were. That could be very true. But I did quite early on say to them, be careful, because you're making, it's very easy as well. If you say like, it's like me. If I said I'm going to take these, I'm going to make a mesh network, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, and everyone gets all excited. And they're like, "Oh, Ben, you're such a genius."
Money.
Like, yeah, I'm a genius. Yeah, give me some money towards it. Yeah, and I start getting more money, and then I go on the conference tour and I'm doing talks, and everyone's like, "Oh, Ben, mesh Ben, he's so cool. He's building a super cool thing. It's going to be amazing." And then all of a sudden, I get to a point where it's like, okay, I have to sit down and actually build the thing, and it's hard.
Yeah.
So I always said to them, just use like the Expressive, their ASP mesh development framework. That's really advanced, written in C. It really works really well, and like it's been designed specifically for like IoT stuff, and it could be really interesting. So I always just advise people to try and play with that as opposed to lock a mesh. But there we are. But then there's one in Germany called I can never remember the fry something. Oh goodness! And that is a functional mesh network which they have running in Berlin. And anyone who has internet, they have a router. They just put this software on their router, and it basically means like other people in that mesh network can share your internet resource, but it's kind of done in like an encrypted way. It's very, very cool. Fryfunk, it might be called. It's great to like for the reasons you're saying. Like we need more anti-fragility in networks. Yeah,
exactly. There's GoTenna in the US as well.
GoTenna. I mean, that's cool, but it's expensive. It's like they're like
that's the thing. It's expensive.
And its bandwidth is limited too. Yeah, you can like send a Bitcoin transaction. Well, you could. Yeah, it takes quite a while to send data through it. Or there's a really good. What's it called? I think it's called. The LoRaWAN stuff, which you can get with. What's it called? So these ESP32 modules. I think the company which makes which is the one I'm using in here, the TTGo. There's a LoRaWAN version of that. And that does mesh networking, and that's pretty cheap. That you're talking like 10-15 quid, and you have basically the same device as what they use for GoTenna. And there's a really good messaging app as well. So you'll have to Google it. I can't remember off the hand what it's called, but basically, like you have in your phone, it looks like a messaging app, feels like a messaging app, and you and somebody else can be connected to it, and your phone connects to the thing. And then the thing then sends the data through the LoRaWAN and the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth if it can. And that's a really nice project as well. If you look at LilyGo, and if you look for LoRaWAN LilyGo, you'll find the device. And then you'll find a bunch of YouTube videos. It's got the sort of antenna-y thing on it of how to build one of those things. And the software for that's really come along nicely too.
So you could, in a local village, have a few of those devices distributed around your village. And if obviously this doesn't happen in the UK, but in South Africa, it happens all the time. The power goes out because we've got these things called rolling blackouts with the government, because they have the monopoly on electricity and then they can't produce enough. And the power goes out for like 2, 3, 4, 6 hours a day sometimes. At the moment, we're not going through it, but it happens all the time. So the power goes out, and then your cell phone signal goes down with it because the 4G and 3G requires quite a lot of power. So you end up with Edge, which is like super shitty, slow bandwidth. So what you could still have is this messaging app which runs on your phone but is using the mesh network. So you can still maintain comms within your local village in South Africa to organize security, which is quite important because power goes out. The criminals are like, cool, now's our time.
They're sat there waiting for it, aren't they?
They're not, and the government publishes a schedule when the power's going to go out, so then they're like, cool, we know from like 2 to 4 in the morning, prime time, because all the alarms are not working and the power's out, so people's security lights aren't working. So, and like you say, if it's 10 quid a pop for one of these, you can quite easily, you just need 20 people in your village to buy into it, especially like the village where we've got a place down the coast. It's very small. It's like an English village. You could get enough coverage for everyone to be able to tap into.
It's very interesting as well. Like the very early on, I mean, this is kind of actually one of the inspirations I had for this hardware stuff. I was watching an Andreas Antonopoulos interview, and in it he said about how there's a dystopian future where we have all these listening devices controlled by Amazon or controlled by state in our houses, in our homes, but there's another future where we take control of this hardware, and we
absolutely.
IoT hardware, and it's a very liberating and empowering version of reality. He says it in a much better, succinct, concise Andreas way. You know, he's like silver-tongued devil he is. Well, it's super cool and exciting to see all this, you know, hobbyist Arduino makerspace making it into kind of self-hosted stuff. Like more and more people just taking control of hardware and taking control of like this sort of like microcontroller hardware, not just your Raspberry Pis, but your like
Arduinos, man.
Arduinos and things, and then they're powerful little gizmos. You can do all sorts of fun things with them. And then you can have like things like IoT, and you, like you say, you could. You could string together a whole village of people, and they can have like decentralized communication just for themselves. That stuff's fascinating for me, not just for just because it's kind of cool technical accomplishment, but also because it reconfigures what societies can do and how societies can work. Just the different tooling, like having access to different tooling and having control over different tooling as well. The closest to where I live, I live in our house here, but then we're building like a little house in the woods in this kind of like sort of anarchist kind of commune almost. But it's like accidental anarchists, you know, they live in the woods in these houses, which are kind of off grid, and they're kind of out of the remit of government. But it means that the community has to come together to manage stuff like the road, for example, and for footpaths and hedgerows like and whatever else,
wastewater treatment,
all that stuff, infrastructure stuff, internet, sharing internet. A lot of people share internet down there. And years ago, it was always very contentious, and there would be, you know, one form of communication was like gossip. So you would speak to somebody, bump into somebody, say, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing this on the road," and then by the time somebody else heard about it, it was like, "Oh,
the original mesh network."
Yeah, they thought that somebody else. They thought you said something else, and they get pissed off by it. And then every couple of months they'd have a meeting. Everyone would shout at each other and walk away. Well, now, you know, we have a WhatsApp group, and it's not the best thing for us to be on, but we have a WhatsApp group, and people daily can post stuff on there. And because they know everyone's seeing it, everyone's a little bit more considered in what they're posting.
Yeah.
But you don't get now if there's a meeting and if people have a meeting. There's no shouting. There's people aren't yelling at each other because they've mostly been communicating through the WhatsApp group. We're just kind of like settling things, and it's very, very constructive. So it gets me excited because just that one little piece of software and the fact that everyone's got them on this phone, it kind of changes how that little society can. And it can, like before, arguably it wasn't functioning very well, but now it is functioning quite well, and it isn't. We don't have like overarch centralized control by state or whatever. We're pretty free down there. So. It's cool. It's super cool. I want to mesh that place as well at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the way to go, because if we don't, I mean, to go back to your conversation with McCormack the other day, talking about Amazon and decentralized Amazon, like if we don't go those routes, centralization is just, because of its inherent efficiency, is just going to consume everything, and then it's going to be co-opted. Because my maxim is like, if it can be centralized, it will centralize, and then it will be co-opted if it can be co-opted. So the solution is to decentralize. You know, you just need to look at Amazon, for example, how like it started out as like this quaint, like, oh, we do online book sales, and now they're fucking, their employees are like jumping off the roofs of their buildings because you know, their life sucks and they have to pee in a bottle. It's fucking horrific. So if we don't take back our sovereignty through our devices and like our own communication networks and self-hosting our data, like the future is going to be dystopian. I don't think there's any two ways about it, because
I was thinking it's amazing how like the I think that's Charlie Brooker, the guy who did the Black Mirror thing. He came up with a good quote, which was that the even George Orwell didn't see that we would pay for the listening devices. So like, you know, obviously in 1984 everyone's got listening devices in their houses, but that's been put there, you know,
they
by state, but then we pay for it, and then we put it in our pockets, and like we accept the, you know, the terms and conditions and all this crazy software, and make all these little concessions, and then before you know it, you're like, well, how did I get here? Like, how did I just opt to giving away all of my information? In fact, I bought and the thing is as well, like there's definitely a market for stuff. So I'm on Amazon and I'm buying. I put some good lights in the garden, right? And I want to be all cool and techy and have it and be able to turn them on and off on my phone. So I buy one of those little Wi-Fi plug jobbies, which connects to the Wi-Fi and I can turn it on and off on my phone. And there's different software which it can connect to. So I don't want to use Alexa or anything like that. So I'm trying to find a piece of software which the CNCs don't suck. And all of them, it was like in the CNCs, it was like, we can read your email, we have full access to your network, all your data, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's just some
can read and write and delete files on your Google Drive.
The one I found was like the least evil of all of them, but it's still pretty evil, and I'm still reluctantly using it. And it was like, actually, no, it's one of those. It's those little concessions, isn't it? It's like, I don't want to sign in with Google, and you do that for like 5 years, and then one day you're just like, oh, go
back it. Yeah,
and then you're done. And you're done. And then from then on, it's like, yeah, sign on with Google everywhere, baby. Yeah. So it's those little concessions. I've made a concession. It's a bad step to go. But there's definitely a market for somebody just to make the exact same thing on Amazon, and it's private IoT plug, mains plug.
Are you using Calyx OS on your cell phone? On your phone?
No, I'm not.
So Calyx, I recently made the move, and I got a Google Pixel that I've de-Googled, ironically, with Calyx. And there's a whole bunch of apps that you can load from either F-Droid or Aurora Store. And I'm sure there's an IoT app in there. I mean, I haven't looked, but like I'm sure there must be.
Oh, nice.
So it's worth having a look at.
That's probably the way to go, isn't it?
But yeah, definitely. But I recently made a concession. So I've got one of these automatic robot vacuums at home. And the first one I got was pretty stupid, not internet connected. It just kind of bumbles around and like bumps into things and like goes around in a random pattern. And then I upgraded. And now I got this Chinese one that connects to my home internet, and Lord knows what spyware is on that thing. Lord only knows.
Just walking around your house, just spying on your little Chinese spy.
Just cruising around my house, mapping the floor, sending that shit back to China. But I'm like, but it mops my floor. So,
it mops your floor. It's probably like,
I mean,
it'll be ironic on your walking patterns, depending on how dirty it is.
It's to be ironic that if this is how I end up in the gulag, my vacuum cleaner sold me out. But
it's the amount of data. It's the amount of data, isn't it, going upstream as well? It's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah,
but it's that thing of convenience. It's like a lot of this stuff, like you said, with the Calyx and F-Droid, like it requires time and technical competence, and it's inconvenient when you get your new phone to then have to like put your own software on there. And
I must say they've made it very easy with Calyx. Like having set up my own Bitcoin nodes, etc. in the past, and like this is easier than that. I mean, Umbrellas cool. made it super easy with them, but like setting up Calyx and de-googling it was very, very straightforward. As far as these things go.
Well, that's what happens with the free and open source stuff. It usually takes. Actually, it's getting better now, but free and open source projects always historically we were known for taking forever to get to the point where like the UI or the UX, was something normal people could use. But now more and more free and open source projects, they're when they're being rolled out, like they're going straight to trying to be usable, like and look nice, and
because the developers who make them are all Hackerman, and they can do the command line interface. But then if I can non-coder like me comes along, and I'm kind of technically proficient, but I'm not a coder, and then I'm just like pulling my hair out for weeks trying to like.
Well, they hate it. They actively work. Like if you proper developer types, they actively despise nice looking software, and the people who make nice looking software as well, they've probably because they've had like 30 years of working in as a computer engineer, and they've had to deal with like these design hipsters asking for all these ridiculous things for them to build. And it's like, oh, you idiots, why can't you just use
just use command line?
Can't just use command line. Why
it's not that hard.
So this anyway, but they're the people who make the free and open source software, aren't they? So, but no, it is getting a lot better because you have frameworks like in LNBits, for example. We use this thing called Quasar, and Quasar that's like a development framework for Vue.js. But when it comes to design stuff, like it's just everything just looks nice. You don't have to spend hours choosing buttons, and it's just all works well, all looks nice. You put it together, and it's it looks like a modern app. So I think these design frameworks, which are about now, free and open source design frameworks as well, have done a great job of bridging that divide.
I mean, the Bitcoin design guide, for example. So we busy building a Bitcoin app at the moment, my day job, and like I just gave that to our UI UX person. I was like, here's a Bitcoin design guide, go for it. And like she just looked at it, she was like, this is fucking great. This is everything I need. Like,
what's that? Does that do like? Because I think I remember seeing a talk, and they had like a seed phrase, and then it was like, you could have it read it this way, or you could read it this way, and they had like different examples of different wallets and how they do it, and how this is the actual way you should do it because it's easier to read.
The vertical is way better. The horizontal is a shit show.
That's it. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
so is it stuff like that? Is it?
Yeah, it's got all of that stuff, and it's got like the iconography, like the color palettes, like all of that stuff. So like when the designers are like, cool, I want to make the Bitcoin be, what color must the orange be, for example? Like it's code. All of that stuff, like like the QR code scanning stuff, to read the QR code for importing addresses, etc. So it just whoever did that, God bless them. Like it just made my life a lot easier.
I'd heard about it roughly, but I hadn't actually gone out and looked at it. I suppose this is what I mean. I will definitely after this. I'll go and get it because it's super useful. Because I'm constantly googling the Bitcoin Orange hex.
Hex code,
hex code. It's ridiculous. It's to write down somewhere, right on the walls. So I get
never remember it.
Never remember. Yes, you remember it by heart. They're proper graphic designers, aren't they? They're the people. They can look at a color and they could be like, that's 43CB4 or whatever. My dad's an artist, and he can do that with the names. He'll be like, that's Caligo blue. And you'll be like, okay.
Shell white. I thought that was white.
It's just white. No, I'll definitely get. I suppose this is why it's great that someone like Jack Dorsey's getting involved more in Bitcoin, because he has that design background, and also like I had this argument with Fitjaf over NOSTR Twitter, because he with NOSTR Twitter originally he took it and he made a bunch of UI changes, and basically I just ripped off Twitter. And Twitter, if you actually look at Twitter, it's got really weird spacing of the different columns, for like the menu stuff on your left, and then you have your messages, and then you have that little thing on the right, and the little thing on the right's like, and it's all weird sizing. They're not the same. So, the percentages are very strange. Anyway, I can imagine that Jack Dorsey and Twitter has spent millions on focus groups, and they've done all sorts of eye tracking, and there's been all these academic studies and PhDs. That's the best way to build a Twitter page. They've done the research. So I'm like, that's what I did. I just copied exactly what they've done. And I'm like, okay, I will make use of that, legwork they've done. And then Fearjack goes and he's like, no, I want it bigger, and I want this here, and I want that there. And I'm like, no, we just copy there. And he's like, no, I hate design. I'm like, go on. And then his new Twitter client now, it's the space, there's all the sizes are different.
OCD space, like
it's like quarter, half quarter. I'm all for, if the work's being done, like use it, use a design framework.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel.
This is the beauty of free and open source, right? Like you can just leverage what's already there. Like it's a conservation of energy, really, because otherwise you're just wasting energy, like rebuilding this shit.
Well, that was like LNBits. Like most Lightning projects, it's some software which sits on top of a node, and it gets an invoice and then checks if an invoice has been paid, and then it does some stuff. And everyone's writing the same software. They're just writing that connector, which goes and gets an invoice, checks if the invoice has been paid, and then does something else. So that was like one of the prime motivations of LNBits. It's like, well, you can just install this thing which does that bit, and then you can concentrate on the bit which sits on top of it. And actually, if you want, you can build a little extension on LNBits and use that, or you can just build your software on top of it just as part of your stack. But yeah, exactly. Like you just take someone else's free and open source work, put it in where you want it, and then it means you don't have to do that bit of the task. And you're free to develop.
And I mean, so I do like my day jobs. Like I do a product manager role for a tech company, and like looking at story points for like how much work needs to go into these things. So like if you're rebuilding that middleware layer yourself every time, like it's a lot of story points. It's a lot of man hours to build this stuff, which means there's a lot of money to build this stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if someone's already done it, just fucking use it. And the free and open source guys want you to use it. That's why they did it open source. Like it's just better for society, really, because that energy can be spent elsewhere on your unique value add that you bring into the market.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that little bit of functionality, actually, the little layer adding on top. Yeah.
Because ultimately, all you're doing is you just trying to do one little tiny thing different that is the value add for yourself personally, and then other people are like, oh, that's solving my problem, and then that's what they're after. They don't care about all the other stuff that you need to have in order to deliver that little bit of value. They kind of expect that to be there. So just leverage the open source code that's there to do that.
Yeah. No, there's someone wanted us to build like an extension for LNBits where it was like a full product checkout system thing, and I'm like, people just use WooCommerce because everyone uses WooCommerce anyway.
Yeah.
And then we just make a plugin which connects to LNBits for the payments thing, and that's it. Boom.
Done.
Yeah, done. And then because the other thing is as well, like if you build things from scratch, and this is the hardest thing about this stuff, is when you build from, because you're doing everything. You're doing like the menu, like the GUI, the whole GUI, and you hit every single bug. Like you're not able to. I mean, you're using other people's libraries, I suppose. You don't have to write libraries for. But I just notice more and more with this stuff. It's kind of fun in a way as well. That you're just in full control of everything, and you hit all those bugs. Whereas if you're using frameworks and parts of a stack, then you're not going. Other people have had that stress of having to iron out those bugs. So like our little slither of get invoice, check invoice. There's a hell of a lot of things which can go wrong in that process, and you can lose your funds. And we've got LNBits running live. We have for ages, and we've been attacked by all those things. We've lost funds, so other people don't have to.
Yeah, exactly.
And then So what's this? What's that called? A story? What was it? A story? You said the story points.
So if you fleshing out tickets for for the developers to build stuff. So like you're writing up the spec for what's got to be done. The way they categorize like how much work needs to go out is they'll categorize in story points. So they'll be like, this is like 3 story points to build like a Google login, for example. Like the great evil. Be like that'll be 3 story points, and then they might budget 3 story points a day that a dev can build. For example. So it's a way of quantifying the amount of work like that needs to go into building something.
Wow,
so
that's cool.
If you're going there, but if you're going and building stuff from scratch, you can easily rack up 20 story points or whatever for some couple of tickets, some features. Like you could just go and grab an open source piece of code that already does that, and you save yourself, a week's worth of work, for example. Which
and you maybe contribute back as well, which is great.
Well, exactly right, and this is kind of where the communist or not the communist, but the leftist side of it comes into, of like contributing back to the community, which I mean. What I will say is like we're not going to get into it now. We've kind of run out of time, but I would implore anyone to go and listen to your interview with Peter McCormack that was last week, a couple of days ago, 5.
Yeah, get full comment on that
about all of that, because like I said off air, like I'm a libertarian / like anarcho-capitalist, but like Bitcoin is a commons, as you said in that episode, like, and all of us Bitcoiners are fighting for this, like, to keep this thing alive and free and open source, and it's a commons, and that's kind of a leftist idea,
because it's within our interest too. It's within our interest for it not to fall in the hands of private,
of Pfizer.
So I said it then, from each to their ability, each to their need, which is free and open source software. Like, make use of it, do what you want, and then I think we have this a lot in Bitcoin too, don't we? Like a lot of people, they just, like me, like you use it for years, and then eventually you're sort of like, okay, I need to contribute somehow. I need to do something, give back somehow. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Absolutely.
And the incentives
if you say that to like an anarcho-capitalist, you're like, do you give back? Do you, like, especially the devs, do you give back and code some stuff? They're like, yeah, of course I do. I'm like, well, that's like a pretty left-wing position.
Do you remember the internet? The internet early on, you had like leeching and seeding, and that was like a big cultural thing on the internet. Like if you seeded if you leeched too much, and like there were some things like you had to seed, like, or else they kick you off. But like on the BBS stuff, on the bulletin boards, like if you were constant, it was a bad thing just to be a leecher, just to be in there, just leeching information and never putting anything back on. It was kind of frowned upon, and it's really interesting. Like, I mean, that concept's gone away now, really. The seeding, you still get it on Pirate Bay, the S and the L, but no, it's it's a nice way of looking at this free and open source stuff is to remind yourself that yes, you're getting all this stuff for free, but occasionally you want to seed some information too. You want to seed some energy, some work energy.
Yeah, and that's essentially like, I'm not a dev, but this is what I try to do with this podcast: is bring people together to, like, essentially seed information. And from the South African context specifically, because like there's a growing Bitcoin community in South Africa, and I think that the grounds are so fertile because the government is fucking useless, and people have to go off grid, not just in terms of electricity, but in everything, and that's going to rely on communities self-organizing and coming together and forming some type of commune type situation, and sharing resources, because that's the only way you're going to be able to survive. And
you've also got
like integral part
in South Africa as well. Like the rand, it's always like an interesting currency because it's like it's volatile, but it's never crashed. Like it just hasn't just integrated to nothing.
It's got staying power.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's plucky. It just doesn't seem to go away. Like but you're a nation of people who've learned to deal with a very volatile currency. And
but
so
not Argentina volatile, or not like
exactly. So I imagine
volatile.
I imagine for South Africans, when they look at Bitcoin, they're less squeamish than like someone from Britain, or someone who's got like a more they start like value goes up and down sometimes, doesn't it?
And if you say to any South African, you're like, listen, this money is not controlled by the government, they're like, I'm in. Tell me more.
Sign me up.
Where do I buy some of this? But so if you look at Google search trends, South Africa for the last 5 years in the top 3 countries on earth by Google search trends for Bitcoin. Like,
wow,
they love it. And it's because unemployment is high. People are looking for ways to like get out of this, like the fiat treadmill, because your savings go nowhere, especially if you're poor. So inflation is quite high. Like inflation is probably, officially it's like 5 to 7%, but unofficially it's probably like 15%. And people experience that themselves. So if they are saving in rands, and let's say you're living, on the bread line, and you're able to save 100, 200 rand a month, like you're not going anywhere. You've got no assets that are inflation resistant, because you don't own your own house. You're living in a shack. So you haven't got real estate going up with inflation. You don't own stocks or bonds. You haven't got financial assets that go up with inflation. So inflation is just fucking you. So, and if you're saving in rands, like you're getting screwed and you're just going backwards. So the only way you can get out of that poverty trap really is saving in an asset that obviously beats inflation massively. And this is why Bitcoin, I personally think, is such a powerful thing in South Africa, and why the Bitcoin ATM, if people can save 100 rand a month into Bitcoin, that is super powerful. But if you go into a Bitcoin ATM that's charging you 10% plus 60 rand minimum, and the minimum is 600 rand a pop to come and buy, that's excluding all of those people against. But if you can come and put a 5 rand coin in and buy 5 rand of Bitcoin a day, man, that's powerful. That's super
change,
powerful.
isn't it? Chump change. Just take your change out of your pocket, chuck it in there.
5 rand coin, man. Looks like a £2 coin. Chuck that thing straight in. It's super powerful, and everyone's got a smartphone.
What about banking? Like, does everyone have access to banking in South Africa? Yeah. It's just low. It's just some people are just on low income, but everyone's still got access to banking.
Yeah, culturally, they don't trust banks, or whatever the reason is, but they've all got bank accounts. So like, they're like having access to bank accounts.
But then I suppose, I mean, like for a lot of people in Bitcoin and in quote unquote cryptocurrencies as well, for a lot of them, they wouldn't have gone anywhere near trading or markets, or like the traditional legacy trading environments. Whereas now, like a lot of Bitcoiners, a lot of people who've been in Bitcoin, I mean, I've had it. Everyone's had it. They've had exposure to markets, haven't they? They've done some trading at some point, and so like we were saying before, the little old lady fruit seller who has never had access to markets, and is actually the person who would do well in that sort of environment.
She's been trading her whole life, just trading commodities, really.
Yeah, exactly. And they're the sorts of people who succeed, and it's great for them to be able to have access. And they would never have access to like traditional trading markets, would they? Yeah. Is there caps on? Because I know in the US it's very hard. You have to be have 25 grand, etc. And like in the UK, it's a little bit easier to set up a trading account and start trading.
Yeah, and South Africa, it's same story. So Bitcoin is obviously in cryptos has given people access to trading markets that were never there before. So,
Yeah.
but the one big problem we have in South Africa is fucking South Africans love to be scammed for some reason. So I don't know if you heard about MTI. So MTI was one of those Bitcoin scams. It was the biggest Bitcoin scam of 2020. They stole it was something horrific, like $20 billion.
Wow.
Massive, 20 billion rand. A huge amount.
Yeah.
They just caught the guy who was hiding away in Brazil. He made a run for it. But it's classic. It's like a MLM scam, pyramid scheme where they just bolt Bitcoin onto. Then we had one before that called Bitcoin Global, which was exactly the same team, literally the same people who ran the Bitcoin Global scam, then just leapfrogged into MTI, Mirror Trading International. And it's always like proprietary trading bot with Bitcoin, the bullshit, and so people have been fleeced by that. So when they hear Bitcoin, they're like, "Oh, I got scammed by Bitcoin." You're like, "No, bro, you got scammed by a scammer. It wasn't Bitcoin." But they operate. Yeah, I know people who've lost a large amounts of funds, and when we were telling them at the time, we were like, "Listen, bro, get your money out. This is a scam." They were like, "No. My brother-in-law has made a lot of money in this, and he wouldn't lie to me." And I'm like, "Yeah, just fuck." Okay. But
that's time, isn't it? I mean, like we still got to remember as well, like 2009. Sorry, it wasn't Bitcoin's not been around that long, and particularly like Bitcoin you could use has been around for a very short period of time. So, it takes people a while to and I think like the FUD cycle, for example, normal people are used to that now. They've heard, "Oh, didn't Bitcoin crash? Why is it now got up again?" It's still here. Exactly. So I've noticed more and more that the Bitcoin is dead, because there was the Bitcoin Obituaries website, wasn't there, which used to list all Bitcoin is dead articles. But more and more now, like people aren't talking about that joke, that meme,
Yes.
Because I think more and more in the real world, like people just accept that it's not going to die.
Yeah, but people still come to me like now. They're like, "Oh, Bitcoin crashed. You must be like really sad." And I'm like, "Dude, I mean, sure,
look at my face."
Crashed, but like, do I look that upset to you?
Look at these fucking wrinkles. I've been here before.
Yeah. How's your mortgage going? And that you've like pumping rands into for 20 years, So but I mean, people are coming around. But it's definitely.
I think as well, like in the UK, like most people have like a family member or a friend or a loose acquaintance or whatever, like they know of somebody who has actually done quite well, like just buying Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin,
well, I mean, Peter McCormack just bought a football club, right?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
So like they're like, "Oh, here's a Bitcoiner now owns and people love or hate him. I personally, I'm a fan. I think he gets a lot of unnecessary shit. But he's bought a fucking football club. From being a Bitcoiner. That's pretty cool, and people are going to start taking notice of that,
Yeah, I was always I was kind of critical for a while because his angle is he's kind of he pitches himself. He's a bright guy, but he pitches himself as the every man, as a fool.
Yeah.
So then the audience, then the audience can kind of access the content through that persona. And it's good, but I think it rubs people up the wrong way because then they're like, "Well, you shouldn't have opinions."
Yeah,
you should. Well, you should, and also you should. But there is part of him though, which is like, he's a kind of a person who seems to have a broad interest in things, like a Joe Rogan type, where
exactly.
Master of none. So there is part of him which is like he opts to be kind of like ignorant in a lot of areas, but I think it rubs people up the wrong way then because you'll have because I remember years ago I made like a hardware wallet, like a DIY hardware wallet, using one of these things actually, and don't use it, anybody, if you find that on my repo, because I haven't maintained it or done anything with it, for Christ's sake. But anyway, so I spent ages making it. It was pretty cool, and I released it on Twitter, and then Peter McCormack goes on there and he's just like, "Oh, the future of Bitcoin is not DIY hardware wallets," and I'm just like, "Bro, I spent 2 weeks on that. Thank you." And he's just bollocks as well. It's like a statement because about 6 months later, like Blockstream bring out their hardware wallet, which is basically a DIY for liquid tokens and things, and then there's all the Spectre stuff is kicking off.
DIY,
exactly. And the seed side, it's like, and at that point, I was like, this guy's a dick. But I think he just, he was having an opinion. It was a very good opinion, but he had an opinion. But no, when I went onto his thing, I was expecting, and you can hear it because I ran on quite a lot at the beginning. I was expecting like an argument. You know, I thought he was going to come at me, and he was really nice and lovely, and you know, he was very sort of accepting and interested in the ideas and what I was speaking about, and it was cool. And yeah, so yeah, I've got infinite respect for the dude now, and having bought the football club, and it's quite cool as well. Like he is going to try and do some. I mean, hopefully he does. Like, but he's going to try and break new ground. So he's going to try and make it like a liquid token thing, and then give fans the option to buy part of the club in token form. And I think that's great for, you know, for like, I mean, I don't like football particularly, but I know friends who do, and they flipping love their team. And if they could just own a part of it somehow, even a tiny little bit, even that little kid in the, you know, that council estate could own, for like 20 quid, could just own this tiny little £20 bit of this football club. And he doesn't need to have some sort of like trading account to be able to buy a share in the club. Like, he just buys this tiny little thing. I think, and he could just store it on his wallet or something, you know, like get a little, I don't know, have a key or something and frame it. Like, I think that's cool. I think that's a really exciting, interesting concept.
People would do it for sure.
Oh yeah,
because
100%.
I mean, British people lose their fucking minds for football. So I mean, they're
this is why I don't like it. Brings out the worst in them, but there we are. It's a funny old football there.
Yeah. I mean, on that topic, sorry that you guys got wrecked by the Springboks the other day. Good game, but you know,
no idea what you're
not a rugby
about.
fan.
I'm not a rugby fan either. No, I don't like any. I don't like any competitive sport. When I'm supreme leader, right? there'll be no competitive sports. I hate it. Like footballers, they're biting each other. I also think there's an element of it. I mean, I understand people just actually enjoy it because they enjoy it, and I don't want to be the asshole. But it kind of feels like eugenics to me. Like you're praising these people with physical prowess, and I've worked with enough kids who like wanted more than anything in their little hearts to become footballers, but they're not going to do it because they're just like genetically inferior in some way. Like their legs are too short or whatever. And I just feel so sorry for them. Like all that heartbreak. Like, yes, some people do make it there, and it brings them out of poverty. And I don't know, like, but then there's a whole bunch of other kids who don't become footballers and rugby players. And I was thinking it's a big distraction as well. Like, you know, when we had our lockdown, you know, Boris, there's things he wanted to open up get the pubs open and the football going. And it's like you keep the
bread and circuses going.
Yeah. And then like people are working some horrible job and they'd be exploited, and then they go home and they get rat-arsed and they watch the football and they forget all about it. And I don't know. And like the first thing the Romans did is they built the amphitheater, didn't they, for the to keep people happy. I'm sure there's more to spectator sport than that, but than it being a form of state control, and people do really enjoy it, and that's fine, you know, whatever. And it's. I used to go from like being actively impartial to just being like, now I'm just like, I hate it. I think it's terrible thing. You should eradicate from society. Not sport. Sport's great. Go for a skate. Go for a run. You know, bit of surfing. But
I mean, so I used to like be a semi-professional skateboarder.
Oh shit!
Downhill skating, but that's competitive, right? So like you race each other, and I surf as well. Though. But the problem with downhill skating, man, is it's hard on the body. You think rugby's hard on the body? Downhill skating, man, it's like my shoulder's been operated, my elbow's been operated. It's fucked up, right? So
I got skater friends who skated hard, and like they always. One of their favorite topics of conversation is how fucked their bodies are from skating. They're always saying they go, because it's also like it's encouraged as well to be like, no, to like throw yourself around, isn't it? It gets smashed up, and because you're young, you think, it's just going to heal, but
then you never heal.
Yeah, then you hit your 30s, and that arm you broke starts to ache a little bit, and then
I could feel the weather coming in my elbow. I'm like, it's gonna rain.
That's cool. Brilliant.
The novelty wears off.
But at the time though, wasn't it? Downhill skating, that's flipping crazy stuff.
It's good. It's good fun while it lasted. Had a good innings, about 7-8 years, but I had to grow up at some time. So now I just surf a lot more than skating.
Surfing's
great. Saying that, I'm going skating on Sunday again for the first time in a year, because I had a longer rehab from a broken elbow, but now it's time again. So
I got a bunch of mates. It's pathetic. They're like they hadn't skated for years, and then they met up and they just had like should we have a skate? And now they keep meeting up for skates, and then they even like made like a 90s style fisheye skate video of all the shit they've been getting up to, and they're all just really slow and pathetic.
Yeah,
a shadow of their former selves.
One bail and they can't walk for the next
yeah. My mate, he stepped off his skateboard and broke his tendon on the back of his ankle, and now he's
there you go.
got a foot cast on. It's hilarious. But
even
surfing,
you're 35 and you don't heal that fast anymore.
No. I got because I surf a bit, and then but then I haven't done it for about a year and a half because I got pulled out, man. Like because people are always going about rips and stuff and all this shit, and then I'm thinking, yeah, it's a load of bollocks. And then I'd always say to my boy, just because swim left or right, whatever. And then when I got pulled out, like, and the adrenaline kicked in, I spent like 45 minutes trying to power to shore. I was going backwards like this, and the shore's going away. And then when I thought I was going to die and my arms were going to fall off, then I remembered, I'll just go this way for 2 feet and then I'm fine.
I had the exact same scenario about 8 months ago, surfing in Cape Town, and I got sucked up by the rip, and I was like paddling across. But the problem was it was a big day. It was like 8 to 10 foot, so like I had to paddle across like directly into the impact zone, and it was packed. It was like shitloads of people surfing. So anyway, I did take a couple of waves in the head, but it's better than being sucked out to sea when the sea is that big. Because it's no fun. It's pretty sharky, that area as well. It's floating out there.
It's nerve-wracking. It just shakes your nerves, doesn't it, and your confidence, and then it fucks you up for a bit. So that's why I'm being back in. But yeah, you've got sharks as well. You see, we haven't got sharks at least.
So are there waves in Wales?
Wales got some lovely. Yeah, it's got some lovely waves, man. In Wales, yeah. If you Google Ricki, so we're in the Gower Peninsula. We get because we
There's
basically.
No way I can spell any Welsh names. There's no way.
It's
that doesn't make sense.
I can't even spell it. RHOSSILI. Yeah, RHOSSILI. If you Google Ricki Bay, we have some nice waves there. That's a good beach.
You've got totally dark now. There, the lights come back.
Oh, sorry, that was me googling something. That's interesting. So no, we've got good waves because we're in an estuary between basically like the end of the estuary between Cornwall, because we're in South Wales. So we have like a huge tidal shift. We got I think it's like the second biggest in the world tidal shift.
Yeah.
So we get some big waves coming in. Some of them are too big. We haven't got sharks, though. Thank fuck for that. We're going to think we're just going to kill you.
There's way more scary things in South Africa than sharks. Tell you what.
Jellyfish, is it?
No, criminals.
Oh, okay. That's true. Criminals with guns. Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Ben, we've been going for 2 hours 20 minutes. Fucking hell, I feel like Joe Rogan here. It's I think this is the longest one we've done so far. So
that's cool. Sorry if you're gonna have to edit it. We're just gonna put it out in like a chunk.
Yeah, exactly. This
nice.
has been great. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a fantastic chat. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy it too. And
I can't wait to. I'm going to come down to. I want more Bitcoin things to happen. Is there any conferences in South Africa which happen?
Not yet. But we've got a growing community, and man, there's very cool projects happening here. So and there's definitely projects that could use your hardware. So, man, if you want to come down here, I got a spare room. I'm sure Hadman will set you up in Mossel Bay. Oh, there's good waves all over the place. So bring your board, come on a surfing holiday, take you around. And man, great. And you got them pounds, bro. So basically, it's cheap as chips for you to come down here.
Yeah, he's selling it to me well. Yeah, if I get a Bitcoin conference down there, I'll definitely be down there. If there's like an event I can get to. What happened to that? I was going to ask about the Ricardo. The
Fluffy Pony.
Yeah, what's happened to ZB? Is he like cleaning in the back biscuit factory? Is he?
I don't know.
He made a toilet cleaner in the biscuit factory. Wherever he got up to, naughty bastard.
I don't know. So I don't know what happened. Like what he was being prosecuted for. I'm not quite sure what the deal was.
It's fake invoices, wasn't it, for a biscuit factory?
For a biscuit factory.
Yeah, that's what makes it funny because he's fat.
Was it in the US though? Where was he? Because
I think wasn't it in South Africa or something? Wasn't it?
Was it locally?
I think it was local. Yeah, I think it was local. It was before Monero stuff. Part of me thought maybe this is why I got into Monero. It's funny because when he got arrested, everyone was like, "Oh no, it begins. Be careful, everybody. They're coming after us." And it's like, no, he was a naughty bastard and fucking ripped off a biscuit factory. He's going to jail for it. So it's just faking. It says you just make a good scam, really, when you think about it. You just like bombard accounting departments in all these factories with invoices, random invoices for crap. And there's some accountant in some factory somewhere, they were like, oh shit, we better pay for this stuff, with materials we obviously bought at some point and didn't realize. And I think it was a couple of 10,000s worth of materials.
Motherfucker. Yes, is that what he was up to? Yeah, fucking. I don't know. I don't follow the shitcoiners, so I don't really know. And it's funny because obviously everyone knows Fluffy Pony in the industry, and he's like from Plettenberg Bay, which is like a couple hours up the road. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know what he's up to. He's a shitcoiner. Although out of all the shitcoins, Monero is probably one of them. Like, it's kind of cool, but like.
It's kind of cool because like they accept it's centralized because they have to hard fork every X amount of 6 months or whatever. Yeah. So like there's an acceptance that they don't try and pretend that they're decentralized, and they're just like, it's kind of there's an element of it which is centralized, and that's fine because we can still use it for what we want to use it for. Whereas all of the shitcoins are like, oh no, we're so super duper centralized, we're better than Bitcoin.
And Monero is used. Like there is a core group of people that use it. Yeah. So like it's serving a purpose. It's got a utility. Like. Yeah, and Fluffy Pony's he doesn't shit talk Bitcoin. So out of all the
shit, try saying Monero is better than Bitcoin either, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I haven't got too much of an issue with Monero and Fluffy Pony. It's definitely not like fucking Cardano.
When he gets out of prison, you should get in contact with him because he's got that ridiculous watch, so he's clearly got some sats in the bank, in the bag, so he can fork out a bit of money towards a conference in South Africa. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't want to commit to it because organizing a conference is a big.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
yeah, exactly. Oh. Anyway, Ben, so tell me, if anyone wants to follow your work or track down what you're doing, where can they find you?
If you go on Twitter, I think I'm Ben Arc on Twitter. And then I think in Ben Arc on GitHub, I think I changed my name. I'll have to check it. I've gone dark again, sorry.
Yeah, dark.
Arc BTC, so ARC BTC on GitHub. And then on Twitter, Ben Arc. I've got a YouTube on, if you look for World Crypto Network and go into the playlists, there's on the YouTube channel, there's a playlist for it's called BTC IoT, and it's got a whole bunch of some of the hardware projects I was talking about. It's got tutorials for a lot of that stuff. I mean, some of them I made when I was pretty bad at coding, so they work, but and there's only so much can go wrong, but just be forgiving if they're a bit buggy, and you might need to contact me to help you get it working. But the Bitcoin POS, if you Google that Bitcoin POS, you'll get a shitcoin. But if you Google Bitcoin POS Arc BTC, then you should get the project. So you can check it out there. And I haven't done a video tutorial for that, but I will do a video tutorial for that next week, and I'll get that out there. It's super cool because you can just flash them and give them to people, and they can input their details. So it's less reliant upon if there's a group of people, only one person needs to be able to actually flash these things, or you could just start selling them, I don't know, giving them away or whatever, whereas before you would have to hard code the information, and then if something went wrong you had to put new information and you'd have to hard code it again. So it's a very nice project, and there's also links to where you can buy the hardware as well from LilyGo. They're pretty good. I've heard that if anyone goes on buys these, that you can get one with a 3D printed box from LilyGo, but there's been a few people commenting that the buttons were a bit crap and they snapped, and the material they used, the plastic they used for the 3D printed box is a bit crap. So that's a shame. Shame on you, LilyGo. But
one of our local Bitcoiners over here, Tensai, he's been on the pod twice, I think, 3 times maybe. Anyway, he's got a 3D printer and he 3D prints all kinds of shit. So get a couple of these hardware devices out here, and then I'm sure he prints up a box for him. And that's
we have the box. We have the designs for the boxes in the repo as well, so you can just download the STL. I love Bitcoin's 3D printing scene, and big props to I think Crypto Cloaks. He's pioneered cool that. He's pulled everyone together on that, because there wasn't much. I remember people being impressed when I was 3D printing stuff in 2018 or whatever. I was playing around with some of these cases, and then Crypto Cloaks was just getting started then, but now he's got thousands of people in that Telegram group, and I know he's built a real community of 3D printing people, which is great to see in Bitcoin, because then that bleeds into our stuff too. Like, people are making, the amount of people who just said, "Oh, I'll make a box for that," and then they start bombarding us with STLs for different designs for boxes. Super good.
Yeah,
Right,
1 minute you're
yes.
printing a box for your Bitcoin POS, and then next minute you're printing your own gun. It's fucking great.
Yeah, but it's made a PLA. I never understand these PLA guns, and I'm like, if you're gonna make a gun, but if you're gonna make a gun, you could go get some piping and make a gun properly from the hardware store. Like, it's a lot easier to make a gun. There's better materials for making guns out of than 3D printers. I guess a 3D printer is appealing because you can. Oh, you don't need to do any. Oh, no, but you still need to do some tooling and things, don't you? It's not that easy.
It depends. If you go the ghost gunner route, where you buy the full-on CNC milling machine that actually mills it out of steel, and then
I've seen that.
You've got the plastic printed components like that go onto it as well. But there's various options out there. Obviously, in South Africa, you can own firearms. It's not like the UK. So there's a bit of I'm pretty sure there's a bit of a 3D printing gun scene that's starting up there. Actually, a second or third guest on the pod, a friend of mine. He's part of the gun lobby in South Africa, and he's all about that. I'm actually seeing him on Friday too, doing my gun license on Friday, so I'll be seeing him then. But it's an interesting space. Anyway,
because I used to be a design and technology teacher, so I used to work in schools. We have in sort of basically like woodwork and stuff. And I remember there was one department, and there was this old teacher, and he showed me some of the shit he used to make with the kids years ago, when obviously people didn't seem to care, and like the kids, when they were finishing school, if they were doing his subject, they would make a little cannon. So they would mill and make this little cannon. But it was a little cannon, but it's basically a gun. And this thing fired, like it would fire these ball bearings, and they would like fire off and make a hole in the wall and things. And he was making sending these kids home with these little cannons they'd made. And that was back in the late 70s or whatever. So this was quite funny.
Brilliant.
Yeah, there we are.
When England was still based.
Huh?
When England was still based, and they didn't make fucking guns at school.
Exactly, yeah, they used to teach how to make them. Right, okay, very nice chatting to you, Ricki.
All right, Ben, thank you so much. We're definitely going to be in contact soon, and there's an open invitation for you to come out to South Africa.
Same again, Matt. Same with if next time you come up here with the missus or whatever, you're in Wales, you go to North Wales, drop down to South Wales and come surfing.
I'll be there in July. I'm getting married in the UK in July, actually.
Where you get married? Oh, Manchester.
Just south of Manchester, actually. I don't want to dox my future in-laws, but just south of Manchester. But I'll be out there in July.
Oh, that's cool. We'll chat. Yeah, nice. That'd be super cool. Get some surfing.
Definitely.
Ta-ta.
Absolutely. Cool, Ben.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you so much, and we'll chat soon.
Bye.
Cheers.